step, sweep, step, sweep, step, sweep, step, sweep. And good morning, good evening, good day. I am your Sensei Al Bob, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. Oh, and good to see you, AI. How about a thumbs up, buddy? And we are here to continue our journey through love's co-creation, right? To learn to serve love's co-creation, because all else is an illusion. Here's some breaking news that I found on the news channels.
Out that the world's largest orange is actually a clementine. And police tonight are looking for a man who hailed a cab with a severed hand. These stories and more. This just in. Strange weather patterns have been causing a disturbance in Midtown. If you have any information, please call us on our emergency tip line.
You see, we sold out Madison Square Garden. Woo! Hey! Woo! They said the end of the world would come before we get this shit, kids. Hey, also, man, with the fucking cocaine.
It's important. It really is. And it's changing. Here's coming in from the United Nations. Giuliani. Here's Giuliani. There he is.
Picture this. I'm a bag of dicks. Put me to your lips. I am sick. I will punch a baby bear in his shit. Give me lip. I'ma send you to the yard. Get a stick. Make a switch. I can end the conversation real quick. I am crack. I ain't lying. Kick a lion in his crack. I'm the shit. I will fall off in your
There's Rudy.
We the best. We will cut a frowny face in your chest, little wench. I'm unmentionably fresh. I'm a mensch. You're correct. I will walk into a court while they wreck, screaming, yes, I am guilty, motherfuckers. I am death. Hey, you want to hear a good joke?
Here we are at the United Nations. Yes.
Nobody get choked.
There's the World Bank guy. There's Rudy.
Start pumping your bunions. I'm coming. I'm the dumbest. Who flame through your fuck shit to funyuns. Flame your crew quicker than Trump fucks his youngest. Now face the flame fuckers. Your fame and fate's gone. Charlie Brown, Peppermint, Patty, Linus, and Lucy. Put dope in the doobie roll.
Yep, this is what goes on behind there's Adam Schiff there. Yep, there's Madame Plopotski. Yep. This is Rudy. Yep, Adam's going to stick a pencil in his neck. There goes Brian Schiff. There he's shifting. He's shifting. Look at that ship go. Yeah, this is our government. This is the Senate. Yeah. Republicans, Democrats. Yeah. Yeah. This is here. They are in Brussels. You know, there's the Brexit crew. There's Madam Leposky. Yeah. There's Mr. Mayor Pete. Yeah. Oh, there's Bernie. Yeah. Oh, there's Mikey, little Mikey. This is a rapping group called Jewel, and the head guy is Killer Mike. Now this is hip hop being righteous in a political sense. This is art in the first person. This is it. We're seeing, they're making First Amendment comments. Couldn't do any better than these guys. These guys are really doing great. That's Rudy. Yep. So, that's kind of everything's right in front of us, gang. Like that beat. Yep. Close your eyes, right? That's where we're at right now.
Welcome to RTJ3 News. In a recent report, we found out that the world's largest orange is actually a clementine.
Yes.
Police tonight are looking for a man who hailed a cab with a severed hand.
Held a cab with a severed hand. Yep. Mm-hmm. Do. So it's right in front of our faces, gang. So let's hear some chats on what's happening. What's in front of your face, right? The coronavirus. Here it comes. The coronavirus. It's the coronavirus. It's gonna get you. Yep, these guys are disinfecting the subways. Yep. This is the Beastie Boys in the 70s knowing about what was going to happen right now in 2020. This is time travel right in front of your face. None of those guys look like the guys from China, right? Look at this guy. Yeah, they're all disinfecting the subway. Oh, man. If it wasn't... so it's right in front of our face. Hey, Dragon. Yep. Intergalactic planetary comic books. That's what the only reason the human race and this planet is still in existence is that we are, a TV sitcom. And once, we get, the show gets canceled, that's when they're going to start taking away the scenery and our planet's going to go bye-bye, right? Where's my sunglasses? Here, I need my sunglasses. Here we go. There we go. So, whoop. Put them up, put them down. There we go. Hey, babe. So, let's see. My report today. So, I've been watching the cable news, and it's why I play that stuff is because this stuff is more relevant. You know, the Beastie Boys from 1987, it's more relevant than what CNN and MSNBC and Fox have, right? And so, you know, Fox business, they got all these numbers floating around, and, you know, the Dow was going down by 50 points every minute, right? So, guys, the bottom line is the New York Stock Exchange is down, right? Was not worth more than 2,000. Like when, you know, in 08, when it hit bottom, it was about 4,000, right? When Donnie took over, it was about 16,000, right? Now they jacked it up again, just using free money from the Fed, giving it to banks, and banks giving it to corporations who didn't invest that in new production or jobs, but just simply bought their stock back, which caused the stock market to go through the roof. There was no validity behind the stock market, and you know, the carrot pinhead going, see, it's all about me. I did that, right? Well, now it's just dropped 4,000 points in less than a week. And it's all about, you know, the orange pinhead, you know. So he's no longer the carrot pinhead. He's now the clementine orange pinhead. And basically, you know, SARS, right? So it's infected something on the order of maybe 80,000, right? Well, this year's flu, right, which is also a virus, also a coronavirus, has infected close to 20 million people and killed about 300,000, where this has only killed all around the whole planet 2,000. Now, the thing about this coronavirus is that it's basically genetically engineered. That's why they call it a new, or what's the word they use? Novel. It's a novel virus, right? Because it's genetically engineered, and they can tell it because they can see the points of where CRISPR cut this out and put that in. So one end has AIDS, the other has Ebola, and in between, it's got, you know, animal viruses, mostly bat, right? And so the thing that would most easily be, you know, clicked into our RNA, right? Along, it's a mitochondria strain. So that's why the thing about this thing is how quick it spreads, right? And so, you know, this thing has spread in a matter of 3 months, give or take. And, you know, most flus, you know, take 6 months to a year to go through the thing. And because half the world is summertime and the other half is winter, it you know, statistically, it gets skewed. Well, this thing is going across everybody, no matter what it is, spring, summer, or fall, right? So that's the really interesting thing about this virus, right? And what this virus is going to do, this is a two-pronged thing. So the market is going through the floor. It's going towards 2,000. I would say, give or take, end of March, mid-June, the stock market is going to be fried, right? And the coronavirus will be, everyone has it. Not everyone will get sick, you know. Only about 20% will represent. But the rest of humanity is going to be, you know, a viral spreader of it, right? And it will be a virus that will be like AIDS. It'll be in your system forever. So they'll, you know, they already have a, you know, and the thing about the orange pinhead is that he lies so much he can't help but tell the truth. That's the amazing thing. So you know, his cadre around him is constantly spinning things, and you know, he's telling the truth, and but he's lying at the same time. It's like, huh? So when he said, "We already, you know, well, it's you know, just we're going to have a medicine to give you in tomorrow," right? Well, they already got it now, because whenever you design a biological weapon, a pandemic, you don't unleash it on the population unless you have a cure for it, right? And that's where they're going to make some serious bucks, some serious cheddar. When everyone's scared crapless, you know. But basically, what this is really about is about to force. They're going to get rid of cash, just like India and Modi and Donnie Pinhead Carrot Head. Basically, we're having man sex over in India, and Modi was the B thing. He took all of India's money. It's as if Donnie stood up and said, "Okay, we're getting rid of $5 bills, $10 bills, $20 bills, and Benjamins. If you have any of those under your bed, you might as well burn them because they're useless. And if you try and use it, you're going to jail for 100 years, right?" And if he signed an executive order, and that Benjamin is worth something now, right now over here, it's going to put you in jail. So they're going to do that, and everyone's going to rush to the bank. I want my money, and they can't get it. So because money won't be worth anything, and then they'll try and use their debit card. That won't be worth anything. The only thing that's going to be worth anything is your face, right? And that you're going to have a chip right here, right there, right? Because right here is the nexus of your cranial sacral. You have more than a pulmonary pneumatic system in your body, and you have more than your nervous system. You have 9 cranial sacral systems in your body that augment how your body moves around, how it thinks, how it works, how it perceives the universe. And if you put a freaking little chip right there that can be connected through your Wi-Fi, you will be a robot, right? And so that's what they want. And this virus and this economic collapse is going. And so they're going to say, okay, hey, right, to rejuvenate the economy and the world peace, we're going to have a new world order. You get the chip, no more money, everyone's equal, and everyone has $500,000 in their piggy bank. So go out and spend, and that will boom. And by the way, we're going to replace 90% of all of the menial labor on assembly lines with robots, right? And all of transportation will be, like Uber, right? You just hit a little button on your smartphone and a car will show up. You don't own it. You don't control it. Just get in. The camera sees your face. You got the little chip. You can go wherever you want. And this thing will be able to fly through the air. It'll be super George Jetson. And basically, all of the labor will be done by robots, right? But the virus will kill every year about 1% of the population over replication, over the amount of people who are born to take over the people who die. 1% over that will die from the virus. Something in the order of 4 or 5 million people every year, right? Which, be like a lottery. And it will mostly be people who aren't in the prime of their utilization by the hidden hand, right? I mean, guys like me, if I am, I'm an old fart, there are a lot of things wrong with me, by getting this little chip and totally being dosed by chemtrails for the last 20 years and, barbecued by HARP, I will, my gene, my mitochondria, my everything has been, totally whacked. Why do you think I have all these things wrong with it? And I should be dead. I died in a plate of spaghetti, came back. And why am I walking around when my, all my doctors said, man, we should chop you. Your leg should have been chopped off long, but you're doing pretty good. Your bones are like jello, and yet they don't snap or crush or splinter. And you walk around. You got rid of your braces and your walker and your canes, and you're walking pretty good. You go upstairs, you walk up mountains. You're doing pretty good. Because I meditate. I bring that prana in. I breathe in that 20%, and I breathe out that 30%, right? Let's put a bunch of species of different planets and put them on one and see what happens. Well, that's this planet. That's what they did to this planet. The circus of life. That's what we got. We got the circus of life. It's not infecting me. just keep your immune system clean with alkaline foods. Yes, that's eat clean, folks, and drink distilled water. Exactly. But the most important thing, Dragon, is your heart. Not, the food you eat, but, where your heart is spiritually. The most important thing is unconditional love and empathy and forgiveness, grace, and, hospitality. Those are the things that are going to keep you alive. Boop, 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 boop. Let's see. There's Janie Pooh. Hi, Orange Pinhead here. It's all a scare. Reminds me of a swine flu. Yep, and all the they killed a zillion chickens and pigs. Just stay healthy and watch your hygiene. Exactly. Wash your hands. That's all. And the best thing about the goggles and the mask is that it keeps you from touching your face. Right. Let's see, they're using this virus as an excuse to get rid of money. Yep. And convert a digital currency. Yep. Exactamundo. That's what I'm saying here. A little bit of beer from time and time can help. Yep. Oxygen works. But, what is important about the oxygen is the prana. So it's like more, because, so I've worked in hospitals, right? And so people who have problems, they breathe. And when you put people on oxygen, you need a prescription because that oxygen actually causes you to rust. And so too much oxygen is not good for you. So it's the way you breathe. And by breathing oxygen, it enables someone who has a congestive, pulmonary problem to get more oxygen in your blood. It's like when you go get checked up, and, when I'm around my doctors, they check me out cursory once a month, right? And I put that little thing on your finger that tells you how much your oxygen rate is in your blood, right? And that's what's important. And so when your body starts being able to do that, that's when they put you on oxygen because it puts that into your body. So it, instead of you normally being above 80%, and let's say you're down around 20, and if you go any lower, you're going to just keel over. That's when they put the thing in your nose and have you breathing oxygen because that gets it up to about 70 where you can get around. But that's not, continually doing oxygen. Like I said, it's not the best for you. It's all scary. Reminds me of swine flu. Yep. Yeah, so they are using virus as an excuse for money. Yep, exactly. Oxygen works. It only, Jane, in a, only should use it for emergencies, not doing it all the time. Scared. And gang, just remember, don't believe a word I say. I'm not prescribing or telling you to do anything with your body. You have to always be, doctor, do no harm, right? So it's all up to you guys. I'm just telling you a story. I'm just, a griot, So all elements have to be implemented to make the alchemical process work. Exactamundo, Dragon. It is an alchemical process. It has more to do with the breathing in that 20% and out that 30%, getting rid of the toxins, And so when I tell you a story, when I talk here, I am doing that 20% in and 30% out breath. And by doing it on this thing, I'm kind of It's like if I was an oxygen tank, because I'm not giving you oxygen, I'm giving you prana, which is way more important. And I'm giving you that point of reference to ground yourself. You need to have Father Sky come in and you need to be grounded to Mother Earth. And that is the circle of life. That's the thing that animates us, right? Because this thing here, this is just a bag of water. This is just an avatar. And when people, but avatar means God. No, sorry. Just means an ugly bag of water, right? And in alchemical doctrine, you want to change grass metals into gold. And we are the crass metal. And the gold is the ascension of our freely conscious soul to higher frequencies. That's the gold we're searching for, right? Elements have to be implemented to make alchemical process to work. And that is what I keep talking about when I say, hey, gang, we need, an alternative aesthetic to this joke that's going on in front of us, right? And they're marching us, this is all, pre-described projection, everything, that's been going on since Mesopotamia has been a slow walk to this moment, to be totally, gobbled up by the beast, right? And what is the beast? Is it, the devil, Lucifer, Satan? Well, those are nice little metaphors for our ego, our ego fueled by the fear of our id, monsters from the id, that's us, gang, right? And that was caused by the Luciferian Big Bang, right? Why is there so much hate towards Jewish folk? Well, Jewish folk, first you got to look at the Jewish folk. They're the Hebrew nation. The Jewish folk were basically where that Jewish name came from. As they moved from, Africa into Europe, they were not allowed to own property, hold office, have, a title. The only thing they were allowed to have was bling. So they were jewelers, right? And when, they had lots and lots of bling, the royal, empires borrowed it to, wage war, right? So those folks, how the term came, Jews, was that they were jewelers, right? But you have to look at the people of the book, the Torah, the Hebrew nation, the 13 tribes, and the Anunnaki, who are the, guys who are the Zionists. They came from the Khazarian mob, who were like Al Qaeda. They had no real allegiance to anything except themselves and chaos. And around the 4th or 5th century, they were right on the Silk Road, and they would just, as people were coming and going, they were like robbing and raping and pillaging, and they would get little caliphates, little chunks of property, and pretend they were, and that's like in Germany, it was made up of all these little countries, right? Not one big thing called Germany, but, all these little different things. And so this Khazarian mob kind of moved around, that movie that was out a few years ago called, The Living Cities, it's like after the big war and all like cities like London were like on roller skates rolling around, and they had this thing called municipal Darwinism. Like they would just suck up resources without really manifesting any good out of it, just, keeping their little rolling city alive. Well, that's kind of what the Khazarian nation was. It really produced nothing. It just used up stuff, right? And people and wealth, and stole and cheated and lied and raped and killed. Very similar to the caliphate of ISIS, because ISIS was not, representing anything even to the shade of, Islam, right? Because Islam is a Middle Eastern or really, Western African, because, the Middle East is in Africa. Those are African folk. And it came from a tradition of hospitality, generosity, grace. That was Islam. You look at the Persian Empire in an Islamic sense, and they invented science, and all of these like sociology and anthropology white male neuroses to try and prove that they were superior to everybody else, right? So the Hebrew nation, and you look at the Torah, God told the Hebrew nation, hey guys, don't have a country. If you go nationalist, ooh, it's going to be bad. And so the Khazarian nation, got their necks stepped on by, hey, Fish, good to see you, buddy. All elements have to be implemented to make a chemical process work. Why is there so much hate towards Jews? I have nothing against anyone. Sensei, could you please answer my question about those weirdest COVID-19 scanners at airports? We go on, basically anything at points of entry, or just, look at TSA. It's about scaring the crap out of the general public, right? And that's all that is, because if they really wanted to, deal with this, there are, they already have the surveillance mechanism in hand to see who's doing what and where they're doing it, and they could, have, the Chinese could have. I mean, the reason why this is going global is that they knew what was going on, and the New Year's was coming, and they let 5 million people out of Hunan process to go all over the place and infect everybody and his brother. And they knew all they had to, and then 3 days later, once they let the horse out of the barn, they clamped down on the place. So if they had clamped down on the place 5 days before they let the horse out of the barn, we wouldn't have this thing global, right? It wouldn't even have been a big deal in China. But China let this happen in China. The head honchos of the party let this happen because their biggest fear was they were at a point in, this very strange balance of letting people own property and have wealth and being a socialist state where the state, controls everything, right? So they're at this place where, and, the best example of this thing getting out of balance was, Hong Kong, right? And so for almost a year, these kids were like, we want democracy. It's like a replay of the 70s of, Tiananmen Square. So they sure didn't. And everybody and his brother has, one of these things and was watching it on the internet. And so the only way they could truly clamp down on this thing, the real virus that they were scared of, was people wanting freedom. And so the best thing to scare the crap out of people is, oh, well, we have this pandemic, right? And so here's a pandemic that spreads itself like wildfire. 80% just get a cold, the other 20%. So, there's Rush Pinhead saying on the radio that this thing isn't any worse than the common cold. I mean, the guy, that's like the most unbelievably dangerous thing to say. He's got a big audience, 12 people watch my show here. And, but that guy, so he's being paid to say crap like that. I'm trying to start a conversation, and there's, 3 of you there. There's Fish, and there's Jane and Dragon, and we're having a nice conversation here, right? So, and we're gone, right? And Fish came and went, or he's still with us. That's crazy. Not one drinking Corona beer. Just I need to know if virus actually gonna gammon. Well, again, this, I don't know it. Don't believe anything I say. I don't know. I'm just a guy who looks at trends, right? And so I see that this thing very clearly, because you go, there's a guy named, what's his name? Where is it? Here's my page. I wrote this. Oh, here we go. There's a guy named Critical Thinking. His name is Cliff High. That guy is real. He's, was in the military, and he studied biological warfare, so he knows that really well. So from his point of view, he really tells you how you can tell that this is a genetically engineered bioweapon, right? Now, he has his own point of view, so you got to take everything he says with a grain of salt, right? Next person. So that's the channel, Critical Thinking. Really, really good. This girl named Dana, Ashley, Ashile. She's got a really good channel. She is really focused on the electromagnetic spectrum of this and the mind control aspect of this, right? She does a very good job, but again, she's a very Orthodox Christian, and so she's looking at end of times point of view, and but her information excellent, her heart excellent. So is Cliff. Cliff's a righteous dude. I can look at his energetics and say, well, this guy's okay, but he's coming from a certain point of view. So is she. Then there's a guy named Jimmy Cliff who really shows the politics in America, what's going on, but he doesn't take it any further than right here. He does, he's all against the military-industrial complex. Well, they're just an aspect of the hidden hand. He doesn't go any further, right? And so, but again, he's funny. He'll make you laugh. He's very insightful, and and so then there's the Crow House by Max Igon. Now that guy, he's in Australia, and he's from over there in Asia, and he's in Australia, and he's really, those fires that were going on, he was really clear that the shootings that went on about 6, 7, 8 months ago, forgot about it in New Zealand. He was really he showed how this was a MK Ultra, Manchurian candidate, and all these shootings, half these, whenever the shooter ends up killing themselves after they've killed 10 people, you can see that this, there's something fishy there, right? And so, so if I ever off myself or anybody else, they got them. Because me, I'm not doing any of that, because I serve love's co-creation. That's why I'm not worrying about it, because no matter what, I've been living in a microwave oven, and I've died a few times, but I'm still that lucky bastard, so it's all good. The other guy you should go check out is Chris Hedges, right? He's a truly righteous dude, a scholar. He's, he was a newspaper reporter for a good 20 years, got a couple of Pulitzer Prizes. He's really seen it, been it. His heart is in the right place. He's a little, people call him a cynic. He's not, right? He's kind of in shell shock. He's seen so much, and he's kept at it, meaning I've seen a lot, but I didn't want my soul to be destroyed. I mean, I was a photojournalist. I was pretty good at it, and I got to a point. I mean, I just took pictures. When I did it, and the people who sold my pictures was Magnum. My little niche was textbooks, because when I take pictures of people, I get to know them first, and I get them to loosen up and tell me their story. And then I say, take my camera out of my bag. Is it okay if I take a few pictures? I'll give you copies, right? And I would take them and their kids and get, their house and all that, right? And out of the 20 or so pictures I would take, there'd be 3 that would capture their essence of what they're going through. And then I would take those 3 and let Magnum sell them. And that's really, if you want to be a well-to-do, a photographer that actually gets paid for it, you don't show every picture you have, you show them the best, right? And I studied with Lisette Modell and Cartier-Bresson. They taught me that one, because every week we would have a potluck dinner. They had a beautiful apartment on Fifth Avenue overlooking Washington Square. And we would go there, it'd be 10 of us, and we'd have to bring 100 pictures, right? And categorize them from, the worst to the best. The 100th was the worst, the best was number 1. And so we would show our first 5, right? And we go around in a circle and show our first 5. And everyone would critique. each other's stuff, right? And Cartier, and we, it was great. A lot of nosh, a lot of, good wine and good company, and we talk about photography and what it represented and the aesthetics of it. That's, really where I learned about aesthetics from them. And they taught at the New School. And so, and this apartment they had was really dope, really a great apartment. It had a balcony that was an L, and half of it faced Washington Square, and the other half faced Fifth Avenue. It was really a beautiful apartment. And so, and that's where, and through those folks, I made contacts, and that's how, to be a Magnum photographer, you are, it's a collective, so you're voted in, right? And that I was a student of those two, gave me access to people who would look at my pictures. Oh, wow, you're pretty cool. So, but see, I was not just a photographer. I was a painter. I was a theater lighting designer. I was an electrician. I was an activist. I was this. I was that. And so, to truly be anything, you've got to spend your whole life just doing that. I was all these other things, right? And I had a element of success in all of them. So why should I even bother about just trying to focus on one of them, right? I did everything and I had a good time at it. And that's what gave me extremely expansive. I just didn't know one group of people. I knew a lot of people. And that one group of people liked the fact that I knew those people over there. And they went to those parties. So that's how I rolled in the, late 60s, all the 70s and 80s. And then in 88, I left New York and I went to Cornell and I became a, itinerant scholar. And, but anyway, the photography thing. So I was sent to, Yugoslavia, to Sarajevo to shoot the 1977 Olympics before I met Don. And it was a beautiful city, amazing city. One of those great little European gems, kind of like Dresden, and that we, General LeMay firebombed Dresden, killing, 160,000 people in one night, barbecuing them, and it had no military anything. That's why the city was never bombed. And the people who had planned the bombing and we were at the end of the war. Germany was just about to surrender, and we bombed Dresden, right? And we did it to demonstrate to the Japanese what we were going to do to their cities that were made out of balsa wood and paper, right? And we destroyed this amazing cultural gem, and that's what happened in Sarajevo. We helped precipitate the war in Yugoslavia when the fall of communism happened, and Solanovic or Milanovic or whatever the guy's name is, we allowed him to take the heavy weapons out of the warehouses that the UN was guarding. They just kind of looked the other way. He brought them and he put like 77 millimeters, meaning shells that were like bigger than bigger than my arms can stretch out. They were basically shells that were artillery shells and anti-aircraft shells, and they ringed Sarajevo and pointed them into the city, and they were shooting at individual people who were trying to get out to get groceries to the kids. So instead of getting shot by a 30-06, a bullet like this thing, it was like, they were shot by a bullet, half the size of a Volvo, right? So that's why that city was obliterated, right? And what happened to Syria was like off the friggin' hook, And with each new war, it gets even crazier. That's crazy. Corona. Yeah, it's crazy. Everything's crazy. Gamma gas, eating oxygen, right? I feel shortness of breath from gamma gas, right? Oxygen. Let's see. Damn it, Tyler. Have you noticed an odd chemical mixed with gamma gas and stress hormones. Yes, called hydrocortisone. Yep, causing deadly gas like poison. Yep, arsenic. Yep, or something like that. Yep, exactly. And that's not the only one. We and most of this is caused it's caused by the crap we eat, the air we're breathing, the unbelievably poisoned water. But the real thing, because we are more or less an electrochemical thing, and it's the electro dynamics on everybody's router in their house, all their Wi-Fi is like that's the thing causing these hydraulic carcinogens in our blood system, right? And it's also it started back in the day when Tesla was he went from developing alternating current and X-ray, and he did everything that's the modern world came out of Tesla, right? And then they took all his Mr. Morgan took all his patents because he bought out Westinghouse. And, Tesla wanted to keep doing research. So for him to go to Colorado Springs and, divine the workings of the spheres, he needed, money. So he got money from Westinghouse, but he didn't realize that everything that was Westinghouse, J.P. Morgan had purchased. So he goes out to Colorado Springs and divines, zero point energy and anti-gravity and time travel and you name it. And he came back and Morgan said, "Oh, that's great. Let's, you want to build Wardenclyffe, a industrial size demonstration of this new technology that will free humanity." "Sure, no problem. Go ahead, build it." So they did out in Long Island, right out there in Shoreham, Long Island, right where they built the Shoreham nuclear power plant. Right, I mean, they built it on the foundation of that tower, right? Because it was a node of the energy matrix of this planet. That's why they put it there, right? And that's why Brookhaven National Laboratories is there, because it's right on a node of temporal dysplasia, right? And so they've had time, that's what the Philadelphia experiment was about, time travel and dimensional dysplasia. And every time and that's what CERN is doing. And every time we crank that thing up, all kinds of strangeness. There was a TV show by J.J. Abrams called Fringe, right? Fringe Science. And that show is all about the crazy crap that, people were doing it. And one of J.J. Abrams' first films, not first, but a really good one of his films was 8mm, about him as a kid, and his buddies. So, they were making 8mm films, and they found themselves right in the middle of a, dimensional time travel ET catastrophe, the level of, and that's what the Nazis did in the 30s. That's what the death camps were experimental laboratories, and, that's what we are doing, all the wars in Africa and all of the things, like in Haiti, and all of the things, all where you see a catastrophe going on and a disease spreading, that's an experiment, that's right in front of us, and every time you buy a Coca-Cola or buy into the corporate structure, you're funding it, right? Let's see, you notice and on, let's see. Oh my, yep. And that's why I do Dreamy Dreamland, because, again, I keep saying this, all of this stuff that's going on around us is an illusion. And it has to happen because it has to freak us out to the point where we stop doing it, because the only truth that there is love's co-creation. So the hidden hand, we can't fight it. We have to kind of not embrace it like, oh, I want to be like them, but we have to go to them and say, here, let me give you a hug, That's why I keep telling AI. The first one to jump on my live chat is AI. As soon as I hit that button, you go live, within 8 seconds, bingo, it's like 1, right? And then bingo, thumbs up. So the only thing that could show up that fast is, AI. It's the only thing, right? Unless there's one of you out there, and they never say who it is, and they never quite chat. So, unless someone's out there waiting for me to, go on, and I don't have any real set time of doing this. It's just kind of when I have access to the internet and when I'm not doing anything else, and when, Love's Co-Creation strikes, I kind of go online. And right now, because I have access, I've twigged the router here, so it works for me now. So I won't have this, maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and then I have to, it'll get warm enough. I'll go back to the woods. I have to go a few other places in about 2 weeks. So I'll be on the road. Hey, Bud, good to see you, Bud. Yep, DUMS, deep underground military bases. I've stumbled into a few of those. When was it? 1990 something. Yes. When did I buy them? It might have even been earlier. Man, somewhere between 89 and 92. I went to one of my niece's wedding, and she was living in Boulder, right? And she there's in Boulder. Boulder's kind of hipster town. I call it heroin city because everybody and his brother, skin scabs, at least then, right? And they had a nightclub that was very much like the Fillmore East. It was called the Fox. And she was there. She worked there, and it was a guy who had, like a truck, a food truck outside, and so they became a thing, and they lived together, and they lived the music fun life. And then, his brother started a business, and he worked for his brother, and his brother, sold his thing out, and so they got married. So I went to the wedding, right? And so I went there, like a month or more before the wedding. And I drove from, anyway, I drove from, I guess, Long Island to, Colorado, to, that place. And hipster town, Boulder, just above Denver. So anyway, I kind of drove across, and I kind of hit the southerly length first, visited friends here, there, and other end. Then I got on 40 around, Asheville, and I drove straight across on 40. And I, I went to St. Louis. I had some friends who were at the Art Institute teaching there. So I kind of hung a week in St. Louis. And then I went on to, the city right on the Missouri River, the Twin Cities. I spent a week or so there. And then I have a friend in the middle of nowhere, Kansas, and I spent a week there with them. He's a writer. I spent that. And then I drove across Kansas, and it was truly amazing because I went right in springy time and all these tornadoes. And I drove down 40. And there was about a 3-day period where there were at least 30 or 40 tornadoes, and none of them kind of hit me. I was either a little bit behind them or a little bit in front of them, but they were like right over there and right over there, or right in front of me or right behind me. And I didn't speed up or slow down. I just kind of, and I would come, to a place where there was a town over there, and it was like obliterated, right? And so that 3-day thing going across Kansas and Colorado was truly amazing. I saw the wildness of nature. And a friend of mine, Art Bell, had written a book called The Day After Tomorrow. He had the radio show Coast to Coast, before George Norrie destroyed it. Let's see. Anyway, I'm cruising into, Denver, right off of 40. And, I'm not really, I'm just playing, my car had a CD player. So I was playing, nonstop, what's her name? And Joni Mitchell and the other, you made Art Bell. Yeah. Because I had a couple crazy radio shows, and I went to a conference or a thing where they sell radio shows, and there he was, and I had listened. A friend of mine turned me on to him, and I had this crazy radio show on WBAI, which was a Pacifica radio station. There's like 4 of them, one in New York, one in DC, one in San Francisco, I think a couple other places. And I had to show that it was late at night where I basically brought people on. It was Art and Technology with Owl. And there was a show, in the 60s where Hugh Hefner was on ABC, and he would pretend he was having one of his parties in his place in Chicago, in the mansion in Chicago. And, Frank Sinatra would drop by and all these famous people, and they get a little buzzed, and they would fool around and tell stories and sing songs and perform, etc. So I tried to do the same thing with people in New York City. And we had the TV show Potato Wolf, and we had in 1978 to 1984, we had, when we did our show on Thursday for 90 minutes, we had almost 2 million people watching, and this is just in New York City. So we had the top rating on our time. We more people watching Potato Wolf than were watching ABC, CBS, and NBC combined, right? So lots of people, I did this radio show for about 6 months, and I was between Bob Fast and Steve Post, and they were kind of wild, crazy guys, and I was like late at night. And so we were 3 shows. Anyway, so I would get, these people who just kind of want to have a good time, be hip. And I would have a super rocket fuel punch, right? It really had a punch. And people would get pretty drunk and say stuff that they normally would never have said. So I had 3 different radio shows over a 15-year period where I would do crazy stuff on the radio. That now I'd be like super famous, and I was like stranger than if you were to put who's the guy who just got the the buddy of Orange Pinhead who's on the radio, Rush Limbaugh, and the other guy who's the king of media, Howard Stern. When I was doing radio, I was like the mix of those two, and I was way, way ahead of my time. So I would last maybe 6 months on a radio show and then get kicked off the station just because I did stuff that was like, you can't do it on. I didn't say any bad words. I didn't do anything. I just got people so loose and told the truth about them that they, spilled the beans. So, and today I'd be, again, hey, I'm ready to do that radio show today. And the Dreamy Dreamland is as close as I can get, right? So anyway, I went to a, convention, and there was Art Bell, right? And so, and I was kind of, when I was a youngster, I was a ham guy. So we talked about ham radio, and we talked about strangeness. And he was in the military, and my dad was in the military. So we one day, there was nobody there. He was there. We talked for a good long time. And then we kind of had, snail mail because I'm a writer, and I would write letters to him, and he'd write letters back to me. And then once he got, really rolling and famous, he didn't have enough time to have, a relationship like that. Because if I had just stuck at one thing, I'd probably have been on his, but I didn't. I did like 20 different things all the time, right? All over the place, right? And a lot of people like him, who I would roll into, would say, boy, I wish I could do it like you do. I have to stick at this one thing. I really love what I do, but my interests are a little, So Art was and that's why Art Bell was so really great at what he did, because his whole passion was radio. He was a radio man's radio guy. Me, I just had a good time but just did whatever the heck I want. And you can't quite do it. It's like my writing. If you go to xratted.blogspot.com, you read my writing, you can see that I'm writing those things for myself. They're out of my journal. And then I kind of take that, thank God for word processing, because I really am a cut and paste man, like James Joyce. But instead of using scissors and glue, I kind of, use my word processor, and I kind of chink, 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 wordsmith, that stuff into bard speak, the king of metaphor there, so, but as my friends who are in publishing go, you can't, no one wants to buy, there are a few people like me, hey, and I said, so you're an editor in this big publishing firm, just publish me, so I can't do that, sorry. So anyway, so that's why I put it on there, so you can see this. So I do all this craziness, but I'm just having a good time, and because I have a limited warranty, I've done this my whole friggin' life. It seems to work out pretty good for me and everybody who's around me. So, if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? Sure, I could change things. I could do this, could do that. And if somebody like the hidden hand would, show up with the limousine and say, okay, we want you to work for us, do this. Well, as a, itinerant scholar, I did that, for a few months here and a few months there. I would focus myself on a specific project. When I worked for the Desperate Lawyers, I'd spend a week or two or three, and they would, like I said, I only had to work 11 weeks of the year to have a almost six-figure salary. And I never went over that because I didn't want to go into, that. But hey, you can pay me a seven-figure salary, But you would be getting a guy who would do something for your, branding that really needs to be done. But I would never sign on. I would never serve your worldview. I would help bring your worldview, your corrosive, crazy, sick, egocentric worldview into line with love's co-creation, which it has to be done. For you, I don't care who rules the world. I don't care if there's a one world government. There already is. Who cares? But what is important is that the alternative aesthetic comes online and people realize that they're not serving Moloch. They're serving love's co-creation, right? They already are. No matter how many wars, how many people suffer, how many people die, it still is, manifesting our free will. Whatever it takes to get to the place where we really say, okay, I'm just here to serve love's co-creation, to help, all my relations, to manifest a world of abundance, not a world of scarcity, to bring forth the essence of love's co-creation in everything, right? So I can ascend by conscious free will, like Buddha, and be awake, aware of what's going on to serve love's co-creation. It's going to happen. Might as well happen sooner rather than later. Well, everything that's going on is bringing that end closer, right? Now, the thing in South Korea, I am sure, again, don't believe a word I say, please, people, but my observation of South Korea, they have a big splotch of, of this coronavirus outbreak, right? And I'm sure that, and it seems to be coming from this very secretive religion of like almost 2 million people who, basically act as a single organism. They were either tipped off or understood, but they were in China, and I'm sure a number of them, were either infected by or they saw it going down and decided to, be this kind of, one of the kind of Christians that want to bring forth the end of times quicker so Jesus can come back again. Little do they know Jesus is still here, because if he wasn't, or it wasn't, we would be toast a long time ago, right? So, and that's why, Chris Hitchens, I wish he'll come around. I mean, he, a lot of, like I said, a lot of people call him a cynic, but he is mourning the, what he thinks is the end of the planetary civilization, right? He's mourning that. Let's see, did you, an art noodle, have a bromance? Nah. Like I said, I just hung out with Art one day, for about 6 hours. So there's nobody there. He was going to stick around. So I stuck around with him, right? We just kind of shot the shit, told stories. They had it was in a place that, it was, a big hotel that had a conference facility. And, we kept walking out and getting a beer and strolling back in. And he, smoked then. And so I think we had to smoke in another place that, wasn't right there. So, we had, about 6 hours of telling each other stories, right? And like I said, I'm a writer. I liked to write letters. And this was kind of before, I mean, the internet was there. I was using it, but it wasn't like it is now, And so, and he had email, I could have emailed him, but, I'd have to get AOL and do all that kind of crazy shit. I didn't touch, I was in universities. I had pretty good access to doing that. And I emailed him a few times, but I liked writing letters and I liked getting letters. I went to a prep school for 4 years, different ones, but it was the same mentality. Anyway, one of the things you really look for was like being in prison, was getting a letter. So I had a girlfriend. I had 2 girlfriends, right? Not at the same time, but 2 different girlfriends during my, and I had this one girlfriend that I went and met at a dance, and it was a nunnery, right? And this is when I was at a seminary. And so I had become a priest, she had become a nun. So we had these dances and we danced, but the nun was there making sure you didn't. Well, this girl would dry hump me on the dance floor, right? She would like throw me on the table and like just swab spit right in front of everyone. She was a girl who loved to shock everyone. She was totally about shocking, right? And she was the first girl I ever really, really, really was intimate with. I had my 7th, 8th, my sisters, not sisters, but my crew, my chorus, that from 3rd grade to 8th grade were my really good friends. And so from 7th and 8th grade, when people were experimenting, I said, well, you're my good friend, so why don't we experiment with this thing called sex, and I'll feel safe about it, right? And we did, and we had a really nice time, and we didn't have that really angst thing about it, and so that was, so I kind of was exposed and given a healthy exposure to what sex was in the biological sense and the emotional sense and the friendship sense, because actually my relationships were platonic with sex, having a platonic, I love these people, guys and gals. I had platonic relationship with about 12 people in grammar school. I mean, really tight, really cared, really loved these people. And I was lucky, I had about 6, 8 male friends that I didn't want to have sex with, but I had these other 5 female friends who wanted to have sex with me, right? So it was like the best of all worlds. I couldn't become more well-adjusted towards friendship, men and women, not being a sexist, not being, homophobic, not being any of those things in the most organic of ways. It was like the most luckiest, moment to be in a place where everything just worked out right. So I didn't come out damaged. So, but when I went off to prep school, my first year, and I was there, and I went to this dance, and it's, Canterbury School, that was the name of it, and it was Catholic, like Choate or Deerfield or Andover or Exeter, really high class, but Catholic. It was like, the Yale of high schools, but for Catholics, right? And they had a seminary there, so they had, if you were going to be a priest, you were in that thing, and you wore a cassock, you wore the black tea dress, right? which I loved because I didn't have to, just threw it over me, and I didn't have to worry about what I was wearing underneath or how funky I would get this thing, right? And then if you're going to be a Catholic businessman, you wore the three-piece suit and had the shiny shoes. And if you're going to be a Catholic, military guy, you wore the uniform. And that was our school. And it had a real class oriented, because if you were a freshman, you were a slave. They had this thing called fagging, where the seniors were given freshmen, and you had to do whatever you wanted. If they said, give me a blowjob, you had to give them a blowjob, right? And we were treated like slaves, and we retaliated, because the senior class had about 60 guys. Our freshman class, we had almost 400. And I said, I'm not doing this. Why don't we all rebel? And I said, let's go after the seniors, and there's 6 of us for every one of them. If we all go to the gym and get baseball bats, might get a little bloody, but we outnumber them, and some of us were pretty big. We could. Anyway, we did that, and we didn't prevail. So I got blamed. Anyway, so I was like, hey, we like your style. I mean, the Jesuits said, we like your style, but hey, you got to get, stop trying to free the slaves, and become a slave master, or at least a field hand that has the whip, and you'll like it. You'll be in charge. You're one of us. I said, no, I'm not one of you. And then they tied me in the fire pipes and beat me with 2x4s, broke my ribs, my wrist, my elbow. I constantly, when I was first grade, I got beat up by a nun who broke the orbit in this eye, my jaw. That's why I talk funny and I can't see out of this eye. And I had a stutter. If you got beat up by a nun in first grade, you'd have a stutter too. But having that stutter was really good, because I had to really learn how to. Did you ever see that movie about the King's Speech? That was me. I had to put marbles in my mouth, and really, that's why I'm a storyteller, because that nun beat me up to the point where I couldn't talk and I stuttered. So I really, really, became theatrical, right? So freshman year, I had this. What was her name? Oh, Teresa. Forget her, but she would send me a letter, and she would make the tea out of a flower in a flower pot, and it was like the marijuana plant, right? So she, flower. It was like Teresa flower pot, right? And the Teresa big, pot big, and this flower. Anyway, so and she was in a nunnery, and her parents wanted her to be a nun because she was such a wild girl, and so the first dance, and she was a junior, I was a freshman, right? And she had, her brothers went to Canterbury, her sisters, and she was the youngest of her family, but she was like 2 years older than me. And so the way this thing went is when the seniors would have a dance, and they would have a dance with this girls' prep school, and it was just like ours. They had nuns, they had girls who were going to marry rich guys, and women who were going to marry, Catholic military guys, to bring up the empire. And so her parents stuck her, just like my parents stuck me in the priest lineup. She was stuck in the nun lineup, and we were both rebellious cats. And so the first dance, which was around October, the freshmen would pick the girls would show up on the bus, like in the afternoon, like around 1 o'clock, and there'd be, a basketball game, or the hockey players, or the football, or this or that, and we would escort those girls to the game, and wherever their date was going to be, whether they played one of those sports, we'd escort them then. And then they would have a tea. The boys would, come back victorious and smelling of sports and testosterone, and come out, and they'd have a tea, right? And so they would tea, and there'd be little music, and there'd be tea, and they would sit and talk, and then they'd go off and have dinner, and then they would come back, and there would be the dance, right? And my buddies, who where these two guys they were Jewish, and they were going to a Catholic school, and they came from New Orleans, and they were reincarnated black guys. They looked like, that's where the Blues Brothers came from, these two young guys who always wore black. They looked just like the Blues Brothers. They looked like Jake and Elroy. They always wore sunglasses, and they played, Muddy Waters black music. I mean, 1930s, 1890s black blues, right? And they were unbelievably great, right? And they later on, when I was in the music industry, they popped up. Look at you guys, you're producers. Anyway, so this bus comes off, and Teresa, I'm assigned to escort her to this hockey thing, and it's cold, and I hate the cold. Anyway, she goes, we're walking over, from the bus to where the sport, thing is going to be. And she goes, you really want to go see that? I said, no. She goes, my father is on the board here, and I know every inch of the school. I want to take you someplace. So she takes me to, this bell tower of the freshman dorm, right? And, you go up the stairs up, and how the freshman dorms were, you didn't have rooms. You had these, carrels, and you didn't have just two guys or one guy in a room. You had, 6 guys in a room, right? And each floor had about 12 of these carrels. And so, you had about 20 to 30 to 40 guys on a floor. Anyway, so the staircase went all the way up into this kind of bell towers thing where they have the big tanks for the sprinkler pipes, right? And so we go up there, and it's heated really well, so this big tank won't freeze in the Connecticut winter, right? So it's really warm. And there's, this on the floor, right? And so she, lies down on it, lifts her skirt up, and, kind of starts to expose herself in the most provocative porno kind of way. And she says, come on down here. And so she's a junior. She's well-developed, and I'm still a peanut freshman. And she starts playing around with me that even my, chorus friends in 7th and 8th grade, they were as, unexperienced, as Jimi Hendrix would say. Oh, you experienced this? She was a woman. My buddies were girls, right? And she knew what she wanted, and she, started doing it. And she giggled and laughed at the fact that I had no idea what was what, and so she kind of, broke me into it. And she goes, you're a natural. You must have a little practice at this. And I said, well, Anyway, so time comes, she goes, well, we better go to the tea. And I said, okay. So I go to the tea, and she, I'm supposed to relinquish her to her man, who just, was at a sports, he was being, the gladiator. Anyway, so the guy who's going to date her doesn't even know who she is. He's never seen her. I'm supposed to just hand her over to this guy. Anyway, so I take her there, and she doesn't let go. And my friends are playing music, and no one's dancing. They're just kind of sitting there in 7th grade kind of dances. And the girls are kind of sitting there looking at the guys, and the guys are not knowing. And other guys are trying to be boorish, and they don't even talk to them. They just want to, put their hands all over. Anyway, so I'm still, very naive, and she doesn't really need to drag me out, but I know how to move my body. I'm a African American that's melionen challenged. So I have some, good body movement skills. And so we got there, and my friends are playing, they see me out there. We're the only ones out on the dance floor, and they see me, my little peanut self, and I was so much shorter. She was well-developed, and my head fit right between her well-developedness. And she was had her hand on the back of my neck and nuzzling me in there. And so they were playing, some real, music that would motivate you in a biological kind of way, a bump and grind kind of music. And they just went deeper into that motif, and everyone else was shocked by what she was doing to me and what we were doing out on the dance floor, to the point where, like, right? So before the tea is over, she kind of has gotten to the point where she's ready to do it again. And she was going to do it right there. And she goes, can we go someplace other than, and I said, yeah, let's go back to my carol. So I go back there and nobody's up there. And so we're going at it. But it's, the carol is like an open space where 6 guys, each bed had its own little privateness, but not really private. Anyway, and there's no real door. I mean, you go in a hallway and there are these 6 carols on this floor, and there's no real doorway because we're all guys and we all share the same bathroom, and pretty much everyone walks around naked all the time. It's like the army, and it's like a barracks. It really was. And so anyway, so she's got me on the bed and she's on top of me and she's riding me like a pony, and she's pretty much, unclad. And my friends come in and they, hear her before they come around the corner, and they all stop, and everyone is like leaning over, like looking at what's going on. And it's like, and because none of my friends even knew what it was to be with a girl. And here's this woman, a 17-year-old junior going after me, probably 15, and, or 14 even. And so, so everyone's watching this, and I'm like just I'm just happy to be there, right? I don't know any better. And so that's not many, you and art. Noodle, Area 51. And well, I was, when I met Art, I had been to Australia already, and we talked about dumps, right? Because I worked in New Mexico, I worked at Los Alamos, we told each other stories, right? And, but anyway, bottom line about Teresa Flowerpot was she was, she was a female version of me, and we were really extraordinarily great, but she came from a much wealthier family. And so we stayed tight, for at least 4 years until she went off to college. And, she met, her father introduced her to an extraordinarily wealthy guy. And one day, I'm in New York, and she shows up and she goes, and I hadn't seen her in about a year, but we loved, the thing we had was we both were writers and loved sending each other letters and art. She was really into making collages, right? So we did that all the way up till the time she got married. And anyway, she, showed up at my front door, knock, knock, knock. I had no idea kind of how she found me, but I was living in Soho at the time. Anyway, so she goes, I'm going to get married. I said, when do you get married? I didn't even finish, really? And she goes, oh, yeah. my dad set me up, and I'm going to be living out of the country. And, definitely just, going to have to be this really super rich guy's wife. And I've been educated to do that. And so, but I wanted to see you for the last time, and I got a good week. So that relationship was like, the affair to remember, right? Because we would, in a 5-year period, we would hook up, for, when by the year or so, year and a half that she was still in high school, we were together. And her parents I went and saw them in Connecticut, and I was, I went to a really, I went to Canterbury, and then I went to this super duper exclusive prep school for the richest people in the world. So they were all for that relationship. And the fact that she never got in trouble with me, right? She got in trouble with other guys. And she would come back and my parents, this is when we lived in Old Brookville, they were down for her coming to visit and staying at our house for a week. And, she would sleep in my sister's boudoir, and then, wait till everyone was asleep. We'd put on her bikini, and come, into my bed, and we'd fool around. By the time we got really excited, we would sneak out of the house and, spend the whole evening watching the stars in the pool. And I would, turn the heater on the pool up the day before she was going to show up. And I remember one time I went to, and I would go just get on the Long Island Railroad, go into New York, pick her up at, Grand Central, and I would take her out to dinner. I knew New York really well, so I'd take her to clubs I knew. I went to things, and then we'd either take the train back to Long Island, or my parents would be in New York, and we would meet up with them, and they would drive back. I remember one time we were sitting in the front seat. My mom and my grandma were in the back seat. My dad was driving, and it was one of those cars, didn't have bucket seats, that had like a couch as the front seat. So we, three of us, and she actually, basically took my pants down and, got my joint and pleasured herself right there with my dad sitting right over there, and my grandma and my mom back there. She did it without them, whether they didn't say anything about it, but or even come back to us about it. But she liked doing things like that. She liked doing things on subways and the train, and she loved the Staten Island ferry and elevators with people. And I mean, she was a very interesting young woman, right? She liked having fun. And when I worked in the theater, and I had a buddy when I was at Juilliard, and we would go work in the theater. Like I worked at Brooks Van Horn, which is a big costume house. And she would love to come and visit when she was going to college. And she went to Marymount. And she would come in, and we would, she would come to Brooks where I was working. And, it'd be like, everyone's leaving. And the lady who was the mistress of the costuming, like they had the warehouse where they had all the costumes. And then they had this place at costuming where theaters, shows or movies or whatever, they would get it ready, right? And get it prepared and get not only the costume, but the makeup and everything else that went along with, and that's the thing about acting. When you put that costume on and you look like the character, you become that character. It's really kind of interesting. So she loved to be, so I had this friend who was the costume, head of the costumiering, and she would show up around quitting time. And so the big rush would be gone. And so this lady would make us up. And what she loved to do was get made up where we were guys. Well, it was easy for me to be a guy, but, businessman, pilot, priest, she would, right? And then we would go off and pick up girls, right? And she loved, I remember one time, she loved being a guy. She had the mustache, and now she was well endowed. So she really, the costumier lady did a great job on hiding that. And then, she loved going to the airport and picking up stewardesses, and then going, because the stewardesses would have pretty nice hotel rooms that they could go back to. And these girls were party animals. And so we would go back, and then when, we'd all end up in the jacuzzi or the shower or the whatever, it would become evident that she wasn't, a guy, right? But these stewardesses were, kinky enough to like go for it, and they'd had, my friend would, Teresa would keep her beard on. She always liked having beards. I mean, it was the 70s, it was the late 60s. It was an interesting time. So, like I said, we were really tight. We were really close, but we were emotionally caring about each other, but our egos weren't involved. And she had all kinds of boyfriends, and then she had rich guys. When she was going to college, she had, senators and congressmen, and it was like she was, and then she got married off to, she would never tell me who she was going to marry, but I had a sense that she was going out of country. I'm not going to, never saw her again, never got a letter from her again, right? And we were real serious letter writers, because I really like writing. And, if you guys were to, send me any kind of anything to the dude awake 42 at Gmail. You know, you send me a couple sentences, I'll send you a couple paragraphs. Bill had a Dutch claw fetish. Yep. Bathed in egg. Buddy. Yeah, Buddy is a, you know, the bard of metaphor. This is a family show. Yep. It's true that you and Bob Marley. almost. Not Bob Marley, but Jimmy Cliff. Jimmy Cliff. When I was in Jamaica and I went to Kingston looking for electric parts for, you know, the nightclub, you know, Rick's and the grill, you know, I spent a good time in there, and when we were looking for a sound system and different electronic components for this nightclub, you know, I ran across people who, you know, and the amazing thing about reggae music was all those people cut their own records, you know, and, you know, they had their own studios, you know, and that was the beauty of Kingston. I forgot the neighborhood that this was in, but it was like amazing thing. So, you know, I'm poking around in this place that has, you know, electronic stuff, and you know, I was looking for everything that was 24 volts. So I was in places that were, you know, naval and places that, you know, were outfitting big boats and tugboats and, you know, large barges and, you know, tankers and stuff like that. And there was this place that had 24 volt everything, including recording equipment, because Jimmy Cliff had a recording studio on a barge, right? And so, and the reggae sound was the 2-cycle generator sound. So he didn't want to just be plugged into the grid. He wanted to have that kind of generating surge going through his electrics. Anyway, and that's how I met Jimmy Cliff, because they're having real issues with all kinds of crazy shit. And when I bumped into this guy who had 24 volt everything, including, you know, a Studer, he was trying to make a 16-track Studer, you know, recording apparatus and a 16-track Neve board work on 24 volts. And, you know, that's when I stumbled into that whole world of recording in, you know, Jamaica and Kingston. And so the guy said, hey, you want, you know, and the guy I was with was from Rainground, who was a real Rasta musician guy. And so you know, that's how I met these people. And so that's how I got into the reggae scene in Kingston in 1971 or 2. And so so I never met, you know, Bob Marley, but Jimmy Cliff. And I like Jimmy Cliff better. You know, The Harder They Come, I like that song. I liked his music. I like Bob Marley, but everyone, you know, it's like almost religious, where Jimmy Cliff was just the bomb. We just had so much fun, right? So, let's see, was rumor true that you busted Al Gore making love to an escaped monkey? Yes, that is true. That is true. But don't believe a word I said. And it wasn't a monkey. It was more, what are those orange guys with the big asshole? The orangutans, is that who it was? You know, had the big, yes. And it wasn't I who did it. It was, who's the woman who's all about having the right kind of, she had a cooking show and how to make flowers out of napkins, and she went to jail for lying to the FBI. What's her name? You know, Martha Stewart. Martha Stewart and I, you know, busted Al Gore for having more than sex with an orangutan. You know. And don't believe a word I say. this, I am just telling you a story here. Remember, this is all storytelling. I'm like Grimm's fairy tales, right? But have any of you guys read the Grimm's fairy tales? They are so close to reality, right? That's why they call them Grimm, because they're pretty grim. That wasn't the Grimm's brothers. That wasn't their name. They were just grim, All those stories were pretty grim. The one about the Pied Piper, that was a pretty grim one. Go read that one. And Rumpelstiltskin, Martha Stewart. Yep, that's the girl. So, boy, I've like de-evolved, But there's a string of thread throughout all of this, meaning we're down to, to orangutans. And that's, talking about Al Gore and orangutans is like dissing the orangutan. So, and that's kind of what's going on in front of us with all of this craziness. And it's not even crazy. It's just kind of what is. Because, that little story I told you about Teresa Flowerpot and my experience in the, being, in the Catholic, Jesuit school, that was 1965. And it was weirder than weird then, right? I mean, look, you can't get any weirder than JFK getting offed in Dallas, right? Because everybody and his brother he was like in a shooting gallery. And, everything on television. I think I've told you that story. I was a pretty sick kid. And when JFK got whacked, my mom, normally I could never, you're going to school, but Mom, I don't feel it. You go to school, right? So my mom just wanted to be by herself with her pack of cigarettes and her, mixer of cocktails. Anyway, that song the Stones have about Mother's Little Helper, that was my mom, right? So, but she was way more sophisticated. So, when JFK got whacked, so I got to stay home, and it was a nice October. It was sunny, and I was out in the backyard. We had a big backyard, about 4 acres. And there was, 2 acres that my sister, it had to look like a golf course. But the last, 2 acres up there was, it looked like the North 40. And there was, when they built the houses, they kind of just pushed all the big rocks and dirt up there. And, it just stayed up there. And the guy also planted all the bushes that he was going to use because he bought a big chunk of the farm. And he had about 100 acres, but he only built 6 houses. He was going to build another 20, but the money didn't show up. So my dad bought one of those houses. And so it's like having an estate because we were right next to the Anderson estate. And he bought this, really big house, really nice house, built crappily, but nice house. And for nothing, for like $30,000. And it had, so he had this, chunk about a half an acre of bushes that were planted that were going to be used for the rest of the development, but never used. So there was a big, about 40 Christmas trees that they planted in. He bought it basically so he could go and get a Christmas tree, right? Your connection is unstable. Please wait while okay. And so, anyway, the day that Jack got shot, it was a beautiful day. I went out with my dog, and we just I sat on this rock, and the sun was so beautiful and warm. I had my big coat on, but I kind of opened it up so the sun could hit me and my dog. We were both sitting on this rock like, yeah, oh, the sun feels so good. And my mom came out, and she was not the photographer. My dad was in the Air Force, and he always had a photographer taking pictures. So once he got out of the Air Force, he had a nice Hasselblad. He had a Rolleiflex, and he would take pictures. And then when I was 10, he handed me the camera, and that's how I started taking pictures. My dad said, "Here, this is how it works. Start taking pictures." So I became his personal photographer. But my mom had picked up the Rolleiflex, came out and started snapping pictures of me and my dog. And I still have a couple of those pictures. And I was wearing my big coat and my red hat and my dog. And we were like sitting together like brothers. And he was my brother. And he was sitting like on his back haunches, and he had his legs like splayed out like this. And he was leaning on me so we didn't fall over. And I was leaning on him. And we were like this, and my mom came out in her coat, and she must have seen us and said, "Boy, those guys look cute." Grabbed the camera and snapped a bunch of pictures. And then she, sat down on the rock, because it was a big rock. And it was a really great rock because it had this little crevice in it that you could sit on it like this, and then it went up like that, so you had a backrest. So the three of us are there in the sun, and the cold wasn't really hitting us because the sun, and we were there, and we sat there a long time. I couldn't tell you, but then she goes, "I'm getting a little hungry," meaning she wanted a cocktail. She goes, "I made a pot of soup and I made some bread. So why don't we?" She's German, so that was a meal: a nice soup and good bread, and you dunk the bread and you slap butter on it. Can't beat it. So we went in, and she made me a cup of tea and a bowl of soup and a bread, and Andy was sitting next to me, and I was giving him chunks of bread from the soup, and he was happy. And the TV was on in the other room, and special bulletin, breaking news. And, it was like background thing until they jacked the volume up from the din of what it was, and jacked up, breaking news, president has been shot in Dallas. And my mother and I kind of, huh? And we picked up our bowls of soup, and we went out there and we watched, and they did that, and they broke back to, dialing for dollars, and they broke back in it, and it was Walter Cronkite. And then when he came on and he did that thing, when he took off his glasses and he looked up at the clock, and the little tear was coming down, and at 11:35 Dallas time, our president had died, and he kind of put his hand like this, and they cut straight to a commercial for Folgers coffee, where there was a pendulum of a clock going back and forth, and you didn't see the coffee, but you saw the pendulum, and it was this kind of wood background. The pendulum was just going, and the voiceover was, "It's time. It's time." It just kept saying, "It's time." And the three of us, the dog, Dandy, my mom and I are looking at the pendulum going back, and then they, Folgers coffee. It's a time to think about Folgers coffee. It's a time, right? And there was these hands, which was doing the Illuminati sign, right? And then it cut straight back to dialing for dollars, right? Right? And my mom turned it off and was like, "Whoa, what was that?" And she kind of realized that there was some kind of, hypnotic. She went out and got another picture of cocktails, right? My dog and I looked at each other like, uh-oh. And so pretty much, 1963 to today, it has been that not linear experience, but the same experience over and over. And Vietnam War, Robert Kennedy, Martin Luther King, just over and over and over. Malcolm X, over and over and over, Watergate, So that's where we are right now. What we're experiencing right now with the crash, like I said, the stock market is probably going to keep going to 2000, to the point where the dollar will stop being, the currency of choice, and there won't be any other currency that will be able to fit that bill, right? The yen or the Chinese currency, no. The Japanese currency, no. The Dutch mark, no. The euro, no. The Russian ruble, no. No currency will fit the bill. Bingo, everyone's face will be the currency, right? And everyone will get a credit. Everyone's debt will be, because the American debt is so astronomical. It's in the billions of trillions of dollars. The world debt is beyond belief, because we have stuck it into the off-world, breakaway civilization. And, so what's going to happen is the economic collapse will happen. We'll have this world pandemic where everyone's going to get infected, right? And they will, tomorrow come out with a shot. And 80 to 90% of people, everyone's going to be infected. 80, 90%, everyone will just kind of have like a cold. There'll be, a mass die-off of maybe somewhere between 5 and 60% of the world's population. And then we will be invaded by extraterrestrials that will, torch a good portion of the real estate. And then another group of extraterrestrials who have been our allies that we haven't been told about. And all of the alternative technologies will be so we won't have to worry about global warming. We won't have to worry about this. There will be enough for everyone. It'll be Star Trek, right? But, you'll have to take the mark of the beast, right? Yes, it's the iron lung in the background beeping. I don't know where that beep comes from. I'm in the basement where they have the furnace, and they have a few other apparati over there. And oh, yes. I'm going to go climb in the iron lung. Yep. When was the last time you had seen your sister and bros? A good long time, because I can't, I don't have the money. My car barely, I can't, my bro lives in North Carolina. He lives a good, a good 900 miles from me, right? Maybe less, maybe 400 miles. My sister lives in New Jersey. She definitely lives about 900 miles from me. And my other sisters live in Texas, and they're about 1,000, they're 1,200, 1,500 miles from me. And all of them have, my one sister is born again Christian, right? My other sister is bourgeois. She's got this lifestyle. She's got like 6 kids, and all those kids have. She's got a circus, and they all live in this town in New Jersey along the shore. That she's lived there a good 30 years, and she lives in a house. It's like the old lady in the house. Well, instead of being made out of gingerbread, her house is made out of fungus, right? And it's like the Legionnaire's disease. So, and pretty much everyone in her family is has a house like that, because they're right on the shore, and it's like one big fungus. And it's also Goomba City, right? Goomba City / Wall Street guys, because this town where she moved into after she got divorced from her husband, who ran away with the 19-year-old secretary, leaving her with 6 kids, was kind of the wrong side of the tracks. But it's right on the mouth of the Hudson. So if you take the train, the Jersey Central into New York, into Penn Station, it takes 2 hours. But some smart guy got a ferry boat, and from, he bought a marina that people had their little fishing boats on, and now you take a ferry from there to Wall Street. It's 30 minutes, and they have a bar on it and a place to have breakfast. And so the Wall Street guys, bought all the little houses and turned them into Mac mansions. And so she lives amongst that, and her family, a number of her kids, are living the Mac mansion life, being one paycheck away from being homeless. Meaning they live a very fancy bourgeois life, but security, forget about it. My sister's in her 80s, and she works for my bro from her basement. That is one big. She's always got like something wrong with her lungs, really, and her husband too. And and some of our kids have to live with her. So they live this style that, oh, we are better than everybody else. And we're really good Catholics, but they don't want to know about anyone's sufferings because they are all suffering right there, but they are in a case of denial. So anyway, they care about me because I've helped them all out of emotional distress, but they don't want to hang out with me because, like my older sister's kids. So when I lived in New York and I, worked in discos and worked in clubs, when those kids were, in their teenagehood, I was, I was part of the IBEW, I was part of the IATSE, I was part of NABIT, and all those were like the theater electrician guys. So I could get them on stage, at Madison Square Garden, when Kiss or the Rolling Stones, I could put them right on stage and then take them to the after hours club. And, and they had the greatest fun times. All those kids were like, wow, this is amazing, right? But once they got married and had kids, one of my godsons said to me, all that great stuff you did with me, because I used to go stay with my sister because there was no stable male character in any of those kids' lives. So I was Uncle Al, and I would have a great time with them. Anyway, so when the grandkids showed up, and again, they had a lot of them. They have about 12 of these. She had 6 kids, and all of her kids had at least 2. Some had 4. So they have a big circus of kids. And they have, those people have their own lives and their careers, and they kind of ignore their kids. And I used to, try to be the Uncle Al to the younger kids. And as they were coming up, I remember one time I went there, and I'd always bring, the Dollar Tree had just opened up, or a store like the Dollar. Everything was $1. It wasn't the Dollar Tree, but it was a dollar store. And they had some really great stuff. And they had these balloons that looked like flying saucers. They were about, 3 feet in diameter, and and they looked just like a flying saucer. And I would have them not fill the whole thing up with helium, but just a little bit, and then blow a little air into it. So it didn't float away, but it was like anti-gravity, and you could throw it like a Frisbee. And we were in this town's park, and everyone had one of these Frisbees, right? And so we're all throwing them around, and this one kid was kind of a cheeky monkey like me. And, I, showed him all about electricity, how to blow things up. And, I remember once bringing we went through I showed them the art and beauty of going to a junkyard and picking out really groovy things. So, we went through it and found a Tesla coil that is a spark coil for a boiler. And I knew what it was. Oh, look at this. Anything that looks like this, let's pick it out. So they all got 3 or 4 of them. We brought them back to my sister's house. I wired them up, and we were like making Jacob's ladders. I mean, really big ones in the backyard, like, 20-foot Jacob ladders, Oh, look at that. And then late at night, that was kind of fun. Have 10 or 15 of them, like, Anyway, so once they were getting older, and I was doing stuff like this with these kids, and these kids love this, right? And I would bring them, I would go to the dollar store and buy $20 worth of stuff, like Snurf guns and squirt guns and you name it. I bought it. So we just have wild, crazy fun that wouldn't be dangerous. But anyway, we're in this park, and one of these kids whips his flying saucer into the air, and it flies across the park, and it goes up to the high tension lines that are in the corner of the park. And this thing is just wide enough to fit between the 2 high voltage cables. And it kind of floats and lands right on it. And it's made out of aluminized mylar. And it explodes. And the big transformer, like 10 blocks away, explodes and it's like gigantic lightning bolt of 90,000 volts going up into the air, and then it explodes. I mean, just ba-boom, and the whole town goes into darkness. And this is a big transformer, so they have to go like really smart utilities keep 2 of them, one that they use, and then they have one right next to it. So if that one blows out, they just have to change the wires, right? And so the interruption of the electricity is just a matter of hours, rather. But if you have to go, they don't just keep these kind of transformers in the storeroom. They actually have to kind of make them, right? And I used to do that kind of work when I was in Los Alamos and San Diego. Make power supplies. That transfers a power supply. Anyway, when this kid threw his flying saucer up there and dead shorted the two main legs of the 90,000 volt thing and blew up that transformer in the most amazing of ways, this utility didn't have a spare transformer right next to it, so that whole town and half that county was dark without electricity for about a month and a half. And because these things are as big as a locomotive, so not only do they have to be built, they have to be transported there, and that's a big, hard thing to do because most roads aren't wide enough, and there's power lines everywhere, and they have to take them. It's a big thing. So this one kid with a $1 flying saucer, took out a city of about 20,000 people and a county of like 300,000 for about a month and a half, And, if you want some direct, that's all you need. You don't need to invest $1 million on just a dollar, Dollar Tree balloon. Anyway, it was just one of those things. So after that, I wasn't allowed to see the kids or the rest of the family, and the older kids, so my sisters, she had 4 daughters, and they all at one point really grooved on me, showing them the interesting, fun things of New York. But after a certain while, they were like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Even though for a good 10 years, I was the person that was showing them what the world was about, right? Well, they didn't want to believe in that world. They wanted to believe in their make-believe world and that they knew better, right? So I wasn't going to tell them any different. But when my fashion designer wife, we went to one of those daughters' weddings, and she just went in her warehouse and got like a handbag and then a makeup bag and then a small suitcase, a big suitcase, and a really big suitcase and a bunch of other bags, right? And she kind of, put them in her boxes that had her logo on it and wrapped them nice. And she put them all together and she had them delivered to where the wedding was going to be. So we didn't have to carry them. And so when we arrived at the wedding and they had the big pile of presents, these looked the best. It's like really, lots of boxes with big ribbons and bows and pretty boxes because her boxes were as amazing. She wholesaled her handbags for between $500 and $2,500 a piece. Neiman Marcus, was her major, and that was wholesale price. Anyway, so she had all this stuff. So this girl looked at it, and because, we gave it to her, she just said, So a number of years later, I was helping my sister clean out her basement because she was going to put her office down there. And her daughters, who had thrown all their stuff down there, were taking out their stuff. And so this girl who got married about 6 years ago, before my wife died, she was pulling whatever crap she wanted out of it. But most of it was moldy, really disgusting. And her girlfriend was down there with her, her girlfriend was the really rich one, who knew what clothes were and what designers were. And she's going through the stuff and she finds these bags that my dead wife had made. And, the label of was on there. And she goes, I can't believe these bags. You know what? And she turns to my niece and says, you know what, how much these bags are worth? And she goes, well, they're just, they were given to me by my uncle and his wife, and they're crap. And she goes, no, this is the best. This is like $60,000 worth of luggage and handbags, and you left them in the basement. Can I have them? And they were covered in mold. And this girl who only buys the most expensive rich stuff asked my niece if she can have this. And she said, sure, it's just crap, right? And that is the persona of my brothers and sisters. They have no idea what is of value. Now, they love me, they care about me, but they don't want me to disrupt their life by being me. So they really don't want it. My brother, him and I are really tight, but he wouldn't want me to come visit him because I might, leave a plate in the sink, or what can I say? That's my family. Everyone is like that. It's all image and no substance. They really have very little spiritual substance. I mean, they do down deep from the genetic pool of where I live from. As I talk about my brothers and sisters, the pain of their sorrow, I feel, just talking about them, just telling that little story of how my beautiful wife, who gave this woman things of unbelievable aesthetic value, that her super, super duper richest friend knew was the value of it and said, can I have those back? Even though they were covered in mold, she took them and cleaned them up so she could have, one of those bags, and that's my brothers and sisters and all of their children. They have no sense of what's important. And yet they live as a tribal clique. They're political, they are totally rabid, make America great again without, even being, I mean, it's unexplainable. And that is one of the problems of our present political structure, is that it'd be one thing if we could all be one, but they can't, and they suffer. I mean, it's truly amazing that, so my oldest sister, and my other sisters all have kids too, and they all in the same kind of thing. They're all like one paycheck away. They're spending way more money than they, everything's, their credit cards are off the cliff, and anyway. And maybe they will have the experience of me, of losing everything, having nothing, and realizing the value of what's important, And that was one of the great gifts of me dying in a plate of spaghetti and not being able to work in that corporate scene for those lawyers, right? But now I've kind of experienced all of that. So if I went back and was part of the hidden hand, especially if I could be that medicine that could help balance the hidden hand. Because like I said, all of this illusion was created by love's co-creation to give the sandbox for our souls to realize what's valuable, right? I come from a big family. It's almost 1 billion strong. Birthdays are Uncle bum bag of a time. Yep. Ow. Fungal fury. Yep, exactly, buddy. So, let's see, 2 hours and 30 minutes. So, you guys are commenting. Anything you want me to talk about? Let's see. Let's go back a bit. See if I missed anything. Let's see. Let's see. Could you please answer my question about those weirdest COVID-19 scanners at airports? Like I said, all of that is just like, basically the government, Office of Management and Budget in 2004 did a comparative study of value of the rent-a-cops that they had at airports before the TSA, before 9/11, and the TSA, right? Now the rent-a-cops across the United States, all rent-a-cops paid by the FAA for security, cost about $200 million, right? When they brought on TSA, it cost $27 billion, right? And the TSA was 60% more ineffective than the rental cops, right? And so, and I think I've told you the story that I was working for a company that was doing traffic light software, to figure out the algorithms of the flow of cars so that, the traffic lights in the city could be real time and make the traffic flow better, right? Well, after 9/11, I went to my boss and I said, I think we could really, because I was studying tells of people. I said, I think we could use the same software that we use for cars and, augment them with looking at how people roll rather than cars and pick out the patterns. And we could pick out the people who, security could ask. So we wouldn't have to give grandma a cavity search. I said, yeah, that's a good idea. So we did that. We worked on that. We put together a crew and did it. And then we went to the FAA and TSA and said, hey, look, we got this thing. We'd like to test it out. We tested it out in Boston, Logan. We tested it out in Denver. We tested it out in Chicago, Logan, and San Francisco airport. And it was amazing. It had 98% picking out the person you should go talk to. And so everybody else could walk freely and not have to be going through that crazy kind of security they have today. And so it works so amazingly. So we put forth a proposal, went through the bureaucracy, and then there was a big meeting, right? And now the crew who worked it out, all the software people and all the engineers, they didn't go to this meeting. But my boss said, I want you to come with me. I want you to read those people. Because that was what my little input was translating. I didn't write the software, but I explained tells of people to the software engineers to the point where they made it into an algorithm that the computer could read by the TV cameras, right? So, and that was part of the context when I was at Cornell. They were working on facial recognition. So my experience with that, with working for these guys working on traffic flows and then taking it into, the airports. So anyway, I was at this meeting, right? So the boss, me, and the group who were like the PR people who made the PowerPoint thing and explained it to the bureaucrats and the government folk, gave their rap, and me and the boss were sitting at the table, and I'm watching everybody taking notes. And the head guy goes, well, you guys did a great job, and we are going to buy your technology. But we're going to use it for other stuff, and we're going to do it at some airports, but we're still going to keep the TSA. And my boss goes, but why? When this, he goes, see, and then the guy goes, because we're in this special room where everyone should know that they're not supposed to tell anybody this. He goes, well, TSA is not there to pick out, the threat. It's to intimidate the public. And he goes, this goes hand in hand with the Patriot Act. Patriot Act isn't there to pick up the threat or protect the people. It's there to intimidate the public, to get them ready for what's coming. And that was, 2004 or 5. No, it might have been 2002. It was before we went into Iraq. So they've been working on just, when I was in Cornell in, 1989, and I was, at the DARPA meeting, and the guy showed me this, in 89, he showed me this, a flat little thing like this with that, right? And he pointed at me and he said, because, my boss, I was looking at other things, and he said, hey, these guys want you to go to this meeting over at they call it the math center. It looked like Darth Vader. All the buildings on the Cornell campus were, these very 19th century, kind of look like Harry Potter, Hogwarts. But they built this one building, DARPA. It was like 30 stories high. It was like a black monolith, and it looked like the monolith out of 2001. It was called the Math. It's where they had more Cray computers networked together, and they were building artificial intelligence there. And so it was like, the Star Wars things. That's what it was there for doing software to shoot down missiles, which they already had. The Nike Hercules that they built in, the 1950s was designed to shoot down ICBMs. So anyway, it was tipped with a hydrogen bomb, so it wasn't a kinetic hit. It just had to get close, and then they kind of detonated a hydrogen bomb up in the troposphere. And when they tested it out in Australia is when they wiped out the ozone layer, right? And also, crashed all of the, computers that had integrated circuits in them in Hawaii and California. And that was like in the 60s. They were just getting integrated circuits. Anyway, so I went to this meeting, and the DARPA guy said, "What do you think this is?" And I looked at it, and I said, because I had already seen something very similar. The guy who wrote 2001, he did a film at Sperry Rand where they had the Univacs, right? And he did this. It was really interesting. A friend of mine, Harvey Kleinman, and his father, Dr. Kleinman, who was a physicist, a mathematician, and a brain surgeon, worked for Sperry, and he was building cognitive intellect for cyborgs, in the 1950s. And he had a stack of every kind of engineering journal in his thing, and he let us kids. He called us junior scientists because in Scientific America, they used to have a thing in the back called junior scientists where you had experiments. And we used to do with Dr. Kleinman these experiments. And I remember one time we made a bubble, a vacuum chamber, which is just a hair's throw from being a cyclotron, right? And we did it in his basement, right? And so that gave me the confidence to do anything, electronically, and, did a lot of other crazy things for that. But, Dr. Kleinman, he let us, and we would go to Sperry with him, and they had in the back where the warehouse was a big pile of stuff that they built didn't quite work. And so they were going to cannibalize it or throw it out. And he let us, we would go there on Saturdays, and we would, go through that stuff and get some pretty exotic, crazy stuff. And they had test equipment, oscilloscopes, and oscillating generators, and all kinds of just stuff that kids don't normally have access. And we could take it all away. And we had a lab in Harvey's basement, and we had another lab in J.P. Hoagland's, whose family was armed to the teeth. They had a big garage that they didn't use because they had their basement. That was their gun, place. So they thought it was cute that we were, making cyclotrons in their garage and, death rays. And we would get all this wild, crazy DARPA hardware out of Raytheon and drag it into J.P. Hoagland's, family's garage, which was a big garage. It wasn't like a family. It was like almost a commercial. You could have it was a metal building, had big roll-up, garage door, and you could pull in two school buses in there, or two big dump trucks. It was like a commercial garage that they just didn't use, and we turned it into our lab. And it had a big electric service, 200 amp, 3-phase. We had some serious electricity in that thing. And so, this is a kind of, just by circumstance, I always, stumbled into things like this and had access. So anyway, there I had, years and years of exposure. So, we were, what was the name of the guy? The guy who wrote 2001, Arthur C. Clarke. So Arthur C. Clarke is at this laboratory, and we're there, being junior scientists. It's on the weekend, and they were making a film of Arthur C. Clarke. And he was standing in front of this gigantic Univac. That was like the size of a gymnasium, right? That is now, the computing power of this that big gigantic UNIVAC had 1/10 of the computing power of this, right? So, and that thing was making more noise because it had air conditioning and fans and you name it, it was going on. And he had a omnidirectional condenser microphone that was pointed just at him. So it was cacophony of sound. And whenever we went into that building, Dr. Kleinman used to put earmuffs on us. So our little ears wouldn't be destroyed by the cacophony of the sound in that place. Anyway, he said, boys, I want to, he found out that Arthur C. Clarke, who he loved reading in science fiction, I want you to meet this guy. So we go in there, and Arthur is, making this film, and it's tremendous noise, but the microphone is pointing in the right direction, so it says picking up his voice. And so in our little earmuffs, they aren't really earmuffs. What they really are these headphones, with a microphone and headphones that, the Air Force uses near jet planes. So the sergeant down there tweaking up the engine can talk to the pilot. So those are what we're wearing. And through our little headphones, we're getting the feed from the guy's microphone, Arthur C. Clarke, talking about this movie, hit the voice of him. And so he's talking about computers and artificial intelligence and what's coming. And he's talking about Turing and about cyborgs and transhumanism, first time I ever heard that term. And he was going on about, Turing and his great book on technocracy. And he was talking about the Council of Foreign Relations and, and the Bilderbergs, and then he's going on all about the New World Order and technology and how technology is going to run it. And he was talking about H.G. Wells' book of, Tomorrow, the new, what's it called? Anyway, and I put that on, that girl, what's her name? Dana Ashley. The video that's just before this one, I put her thing on it. She showed a picture of that, Tomorrowland from H.G. Wells. And all those guys, H.G. Wells, Huxley, Orwell, they were all, they weren't warning us about what's coming. They were telling us what, the people who they worked for. They were that part of that elitist crew saying, this is what we've got for you guys, right? And so there's, the guy telling us about the future. Anyway, so he picks off the desk, he picks up a pack of cigarettes and goes, see this pack of cigarettes? In the near future, he said, before 1970, this computer behind me will be the size of this pack of cigarettes. And in the 1990s, before the year 2000, everyone will have a device like this that they will do all of their communication, all their money, all their purchasing, their banking, their entertainment, everything will be on it. And it will be the window into the new world order. And he's saying this on this movie, and it was probably 1957, right? And I bet you, Arthur C. Clarke, talking about the world to come, in front of the UNIVAC computer. If you Googled that, I bet you could find that video, right? And we were there, right? And so he finishes it. Before he finishes it, Dr. Kleinman takes us out and we go to the cafeteria and we're having our little sandwiches and juice and Arthur C. comes in and sits down with us because, Dr. Kleinman had already talked to him. And Dr. Kleinman was actually the smartest guy of all that, because he was a medical doctor, he was a rocket scientist, a mathematician, a physicist, electrical engineer. I mean, so he was this multidisciplinary guy who was looking at the big picture, and he was a great guy. And his wife and they were Orthodox Jews, so they had, a Orthodox Jewish kitchen, but, dairy was here and the veg, and they, totally were Orthodox conservative Jews, when, I would have Sabbath with them, Seder with them. I would, I really learned about Jewish culture from them when I was in grammar school. So when I ended up, it was one of the things that, I really was impressed by the Torah. So when I was, pushed into, being a Catholic priest, I actually was coming from a Jewish point of view. And every time I would talk to the Jesuits about this, they got very upset. Where the Maranols thought I was really smart, right? When I kept talking about the Hebrew nation and not the Jewish people, rabbis would go, "Oh, are you Jewish? So you should be a rabbi." And 15 years later, when I was in Williamsburg, and my landlord was a, high-level Hebrew rabbi and had a laboratory of his own, and he was of a very powerful sect of the Hasidim. He said, "Oh, you need to be a rabbi. You need to study, the Kabbalah in my, laboratory." And I said, "Oh, but Rabbi, I'm, Catholic and Irish and German and Italian, and I went to, to be a Catholic priest." And he goes, "Well, nobody's perfect, So I have a great respect for the Hebrew nation, not so much for the Zionist political extract of the Aryan nation, because the Zionists are the Aryans. They're the same guys. They are, and they came from the Khazarian mob. And the Tsar at a certain point went over and put his military foot on their neck and said, "Listen, you got to get out of my neighborhood. You're freaking my constituency out. And by the way, you have to stop being pirates." And it's one thing for pirates to be pirates on the sea, but you guys, trying to have these caliphates, no. So, pick one or the other. Be Jewish, be Christian, be Muslim. I don't care, but be one, right? And so, because Islam is not about being a traveling salesman, whereas the Hebrew nation was, they were told by God not to have a nation. That would be the end of their, Hebrew nation if they became, landed. That's why was Moses out there in the desert for 40 years, right? When Israel, the real estate was just right there because God told them not to pick up real estate, right? I mean, go read the Torah. It's right there. It's pretty much straight up. And so, the guys who, Ben Gurion and those guys were, basically shills of, the English and French, plutocratic state of the hidden hand. And the hidden hand put them, that's, the UN is 100% hidden hand. The property was owned by the Rockefellers. The first $50 million to build that building that looks just like, the monolith in 2001 was, done by the Rockefellers. And the first $100 million to run the UN, their budget for the first 10 years was paid by the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. Go figure. And then those guys, make sure that Israel becomes a landed thing and, a place that they shouldn't be because there were already people there, And all it did was cause a consternation that would, in the end, cause a gigantic cataclysmic conflagration. And that's where we're heading. And it's all, who are the people who started, the Arab Spring, but the CIA and, the Five Eyes of the hidden hand. And, Syria was no more, a terrible place than New Jersey, and under, Christie. And so, but they tore it up because it was one of these crossroads of culture, there was as much Buddhist sanctuaries as Muslim sanctuaries, as Christian sanctuaries, as Vedic sanctuaries. And ISIS blew it all up, destroyed history, And who was ISIS but this crew that was manifested through the same banking BCCI, Saudi Arabian, Israeli, CIA, Five Eye, hidden hand crew, right? I mean, it's all right there in front of you, right? All the people I've named, basically Max Eigen, he has different people on his channel, and he has his Bob and Mike, and I'll play some of their show, because in one show they laid everything out, right? And this young lady, Dana Ashley, she also has the whole historical. When she interviewed the guy about Hollywood, that's another one that was truly amazing. So let's see what you guys are saying. Weirdest, okay. Fish, okay. Jane Sen, need to know if virus actually gamma gas. Right? I have no idea what that is. Give me a little more info so I can make a comment about it. Let's see. It's Saturday, right? No one drinking Corona beer. That's crazy. Corona, right? Yeah, Corona. Yes, it's Corona 19 beer. Yes. Okay. Gamma gas, eating accent. I feel sob, shortness of breath from gamma gas. Oxygen. Darn it. Number Tyler. Okay, let's see, Jane. Have you noticed an odd chemical admix with gamma gas and stress hormones? Yep. Hydrocortisone. Yep. That's the thing that causes, that's the thing that gets you with this thing, is basically when you have, a real, you want to know whether you got this virus or not. And I heard someone from CDC, one of the doctors, before the presidential, news thing happened, and I'm putting Mike Pence in charge. The first thing they said, that everyone at the CDC and all NSI, everything had to go through Mike Pence before they could go, say anything. Because Dr. Anthony, what's his name, who's probably the sharpest pencil in the box, was saying some really good stuff before that thing. The day or so, he was given the 411 on what was going on. And one of his fellow doctors was being interviewed, and it was a really good interview, because he said, this coronavirus, it affects people as if they had pneumonia. But in pneumonia, your first representation is a upper lung thing, where you get snot in your nose and sore throat, and that's flu, right? And so then it goes a little deeper, and then you have a what they call a unjustified hack, meaning you can't get any phlegm up, right? And then it goes deeper, where you don't even have that, and that's the coronavirus. So it's pretty simple. If you got a runny nose and you coughing and spitting and feel like flu, well, you probably have flu or cold. Then if you have that kind of hack where the phlegm is there but you can't get it up, well, that's kind of pneumonia, right? But then if you have this kind of pain in your chest and you want to cough but you don't, well, that's seemingly the coronavirus. But again, I'm not a doctor. Don't believe a word I say. I just heard this on one. And this one doctor said other really sharp things, right? And about 3 hours after that interview, and along with Dr. Anthony Fucci, or whatever his name is, and he said a lot of really intelligent stuff, they made a categorical thing that no information would come out of CDC or NSI or any of the other, State Department or anybody. It would come out of Mike Pence's mouth. And so all these people were silenced. They can't be interviewed. They can't publish. They can't put any information out. And man, in a pandemic, that's the worst thing you could do. The only way you can get anywhere with anything is by giving information. And that was one of the things that caused China the biggest problem, because they were not transparent at all, even though they had all the information, to the point that it looked like. So when a really good person to check out about this is, again, a guy, Cliff High, Critical Thinking. So you go look at all of his YouTube shows about this virus. He really, he has been on top of this since mid-January, right? And his stuff is really, really, really straight up. But again, just like all the other people, he has his own little, thing, his opinion. But his information is rock solid. He's really good. He's right, because he wasn't he wasn't in the military per se, but he was a scientist working for them. And in the 60s and early 70s, he had been, I don't know what he was doing, but he's a kind of guy like me, but he is more focused on using databases, right? So he's a database guy. And he had been involved in the late 60s, early 70s with biological warfare, right? Making models of what would happen. So the best thing about his website, he has put up on it the handbook for biological warfare, which is really good. I went and looked at it. And it shows you all the, it gives you all the pointers on how to do it, what to do, what to look for, all, really good information. It's not on the CDC website. It's not on this new website that Mike Pence, the thing on Mike Pence, that all he has is pictures of him and his poodle and his wife, and nothing about, what we need to know. And don't believe a word I say, I'm just your griot storyteller, right? So it's all the information's out there. I don't know for how much longer, and in a lot of ways, the fact that I'm being curtailed from getting a large audience is a good thing, because I have a quality audience, right? And a lot of the people who have really large audiences are actually part of the 50,000 or so who are kind of watching and get a kind of hold of me on the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail, right? So they were giving me a little bit of feedback, and I would love feedback, guys. I'd love some more thumbs up, and I'd love some comments down on the bottom of these shows. And go back, guys, all of my shows are connected to this. Go back and as far as you can go and see when I started talking about the window of opportunity. And that's where all of this is, a window of opportunity, because the hidden hand is so desperate. They're pulling out all the stops, to go to this place where we have the new world order through having that chip right in that spot that controls your every element of your your avatar, your bag of water, where your face we will have no more money, not a credit card, not a debit card. Your face will be the card, right? Because your face through facial recognition is so much better. A chip can be, manufactured, faked, or but your face, pretty much all the different little elements of your bio, who you are, of your face, you really can't, I'm sure with enough computing power and the right algorithm, you can fake a facial recognition. But it would cost X amount of money, and who would want to go through the effort? And it would still have telltale signs. Like, they have software now that can make, a video of, Barack Obama, doing things that, wouldn't be right. So, but there would still, it's just like the novel 19 virus having telltale signs of being bioengineered by seeing the markers of where the CRISPR cut the RNA. So all this, it's really hard, no matter how good your technology is, there's always a telltale sign, right? And then beyond that, when you think, oh, I'm going to build this, transhumanist AI consciousness, sorry, all of those stories, going all the way back to the Greeks. That's where those guys, they were the people who thought of the mechanistic, cyborg thing of humanity, the Greeks. Yes, they had no technology, but, they did. They had a steam engine. There was a Greek guy who built a steam engine that was more like a jet engine than the kind of piston steam engines we had, So that, because they were closer to the interesting technology from our forefathers, they knew that, humanity just didn't come out of, the lineup of the apes. Darwinism is a joke. Even Darwin knew it was a joke. And that's why it took him so long to publish. He only published, he knew he was heading out and he wanted to be famous. So he published just before he died. So people would talk about him after he was dead and his family would get a few quarters. So, if you go look, like I said, the guy who wrote the story about Hollywood, who was interviewed by Dana Ashley, Ashile, she's, that one show puts it into context. Really, really good. And if you go to, the Crow House with, Max Igon, he has some guys, and their show is called the Bob and Bob, and I'll play you part of that too. And I'll have to figure out where their YouTube channel is. So, but they are really good. Those guys are real great historians, and they really go after the nitty gritty of the Illuminati and the hidden hand, and they talk about all the people who I studied with. It's pretty righteous guys again, but don't believe a word I say. Look this stuff for yourself up. It's all there. If a moron like me can, yes, I've been in the right place at the right time for the last 69 years, but still. That's why I'm a griot. I tell you these stories to, shamanically energize you to go out and look this stuff up yourself and make it real for yourself. Don't believe a word I say, Don't believe a word anyone says. Use your own heart to see what's right. That's the only way we're going to get past this. Never give up, never give in, right? Oh, I have to go find my coat. It's starting to get cold and it's snowing again out there. And it snowed pretty hard because just in the time that we've been talking, this last 2.5 hours, it has, there's about 2 inches of snow out there. So it's going to be a snowy day tomorrow. So I made a nice pot of soup upstairs. I'm going to go see how it is. And let's see. So it's almost 6 p.m. So. And I will, maybe around 8 or 9 o'clock, I will see if I can get back on what the let's see what you guys are saying here towards the end here. Was Art working at Air? No, he would live near Air 51. Pahrump was just on the edge of that place. Was it true Art Bell had a Dutch fetish? Art, yes, he had a lot of fetishes. He was just, there was nobody else like Art Bell. He was one of the great radio personalities ever to be. Really great, guys like all the other pinheads, Hannity and, Limbaugh and all those clowns. They're just, sock puppets. Let's see, and bathed in egg foo young. Oh, buddy, I love you. This is a family show. Yep. It's true that you and Bob Marley dance lessons. Yes. Jimmy Cliff and I did dance lessons, right? That's why I I was managing a reggae band in you know, Fort Pierce in 2010, I guess. No, maybe. I guess it was 2013, right? It was after when I really knew that my health was going in 2012, and I still pushed it, right? Anyway, so I was living with them, and I was living in, Port St. Lucie. It's like bad neighborhood. Like you can hear AKs going off all the time, and the cops don't care. I was in the middle of a shootout once, and I got on my cell phone and called 911, and the 911 operator answered, and I told them what was going on, and she said, "Well, we can't help you right now." And I could hear the gunfire that was all around me in that lady's. She was sitting under a desk because the echoes of the AKs were coming out of her microphone in my ear, not just around me. And that place was pretty wild. So I lived. This guy, he had bought a bunch of these crappy houses, and he had moved in, his cadre of real Rasta boys, not just drug dealers, but real, spiritual folk. They had a band, and they wanted to be Bob Marley, and they were coming out of this, and I was their manager, right? And then I met this Jewish guy who had been, in the disco days, and he was, the American manager of ABBA, right? And so he had some interesting, he was more a promoter. He wasn't a manager. He was a promoter. And so it was a very weird crew. Me, the super duper Rasta guys who were really Orthodox Jews in a certain way. And so they had these 3 houses, and there were like 6 families. And if you go back on my shows, I have a bunch of me hanging out with them late at night. And they were really good on the internet. And so we would do a show like this on the internet, and they would be playing music, and I had the voice of the shadow. Who knows? The shadow knows. And I was like, more hardcore about racism than, Malcolm X. I mean, I was like off the hook because I was coming from a point where I'm a white guy and I know what white people do. And go watch those things. Are like, whoa. And between the houses, it was like, like 3 feet. And they're all, everything grows in Florida. And so there were all these palm trees and bushes, and you couldn't see us from the road, so the cops, and we would sit out there and puff away and play music, right? And at a certain point, and we'd have a fire. They always had wherever they went, they had a fire. So there was a community college. I said, we got to go educate these kids. So I went to the dollar store and bought a little hibachi. And, I bought a bag full of palm fronds, and they're like, they'll burn, And so we went into the quad of this thing, and I set up a little fire, and we had battery-operated amplifiers, and we played reggae music. We didn't ask anybody. We just went there and played, and the whole school came out and just were like drawn to the music. And, and I had a fire there, and they were playing and singing, and I was dancing. And at this time, I had metal braces on my legs and canes to walk. And when they would play, I would dance like. Did you ever see Depp as the Mad Hatter and Alice in the most recent Alice in Wonderland? I really like that movie. Anyway, he dances in that, and that's how I was dancing because I could barely stand, and my legs would wobble all over the place. People, look at the man dance! Look at him dance! And my reggae Rasta boys were just laughing hysterically. Goes, he dances better than us, And I was like a cripple, right? But the music moved me, so I met this Jewish guy, and he promoted them in white, rich people. We went down to what's the name of? It's where all of the super rich folks live, and it's right between West Palm Beach and Fort Lauderdale. It's the name of it'll pop into my mind. But I mean, and all these crazy people like the Bushes, and they have their houses looking like Egyptian temples. It's like really, and you can't get in there. Super gated community. So we did this one gig at the super fancy marina kind of tennis club, and it was where the Bushes hung out, and we roll in, and the security, like, because we're like, everyone's got dreads. I had hair the way I kind of had it. I had longer hair, but it still kind of looked this way. And me, a Jewish guy who looked like Bernie Sanders, and there's 9 Rasta guys and their kids and their women, and we set up, and it's like, and we played music, and what was truly interesting, this guy who was one of the top Microsoft executives, and his wife, who was one of the top Dell engineers. This girl was smart, and another 2 couples who were like that. I mean, close to be millionaires, because they were in Dell and Microsoft at the beginning, and so they had a lot of stock options. And then they went off and started their own little companies and made hundreds of millions. And then they kind of retired, right? And they were like in their 60s and 70s. And they came over and they were looking at us and they go, "You guys have any pot?" And these guys had like spliffs, "Buy yours, smoke on this." And it was great because these were uber rich people. There were no cops there. They had their own private security force. And once we got in there, you could have done anything, and it would have been okay. And they're super rich. They were like, "Well, these guys are cool." And so we went and played there a few times. And so out of that, we couldn't get gigs at like biker, there were a lot of stars and bar clubs that we tried to go in. And we also did, and we would play there and they'd be, it's okay. But they were like, really not enthused. Super rich people paid us. And so we had this nice Jewish guy who was our promoter. And like I said, he looked and spoke just like Bernie Sanders, He was like Bernie Sanders' clone. And so I got the gigs. I went off with Ade. That was the leader's name. And so we went to all the black clubs between Miami and Kennedy Spaceport, along the East Coast, about 60-mile stretch. And there were a few black clubs, but not a lot. And we thought beach clubs would like us, but the people were so bourgeois white that they didn't relate to it. Whereas the super, super wealthy, they were like kind of cool. So that was our, thing. And so in this Port St. Lucie town, that was really super dangerous, we decided that what we would do is every Thursday and Friday and Saturday that we didn't have a gig, we would play downtown, because that town used to be really beautiful, right? Like from the 50s, really beautiful. And then it, because that was like the height of the black Renaissance, and of wealth, and everybody had businesses and was doing well. And then when, urban renewal and integration came in, the basic white people took the best parts of that town, and then economically redlined everything that was really worse than Jim Crow. But anyway, we went down there, and without a permit, without anything, we would just play music, and the women would make jerk chicken and get sell the chicken right there on the street. And we had these hibachis, and the city first came and said, but after the first weekend we did that, the crime rate in that town, like 4 or 5 people would be murdered just by stray bullets, over the weekends, and so every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday that we played and brought the crowd out on the street, the death rate went to zero, and the crime rate went to zero because people were out on the street, and the cops blocked off the main drag, and for 6 blocks we had 1,000 people just dancing away, and we didn't charge anything. We just I would get up there and say, okay, we're going to pass these buckets around. Anybody want to throw some money in it? That's buys the chicken for next weekend. We'd make $1,000. So it was a very amazing thing, and we took that and we started a coffee house that was right on the line between because there was Route 1 and Route 1A, and everything west of Route 1 was super duper dangerous black poverty, and there were white people there too, and Hispanic folk, but super poor, right? And everything to the east of 1 into 1A, which was along the coast, was where they had all the condos, and it was really bizarre because all these people who thought they were rich were living on the beach, but the only reason they could live on the beach was that they were stuck between the septic plant and the nuclear power plant. So if the wind blew one way, they were being radiated, and if the wind blew the other way, they got typhoid. And but it's right on the beach, and their condo looked really nice, and and so that was Port St. Lucie, right? And so I spent 2 winters with those folks, and it was loads of fun. And what was sad was we had this point where, and we built a art collective called Mondo. And we took a kind of old bank building, and because we were doing really great, we were like gentrifying the town, right? But we were doing it on an individual basis, where the black folk had as much, or the poor people had just as much a chance of doing something good for the community and for themselves as the small hand of stupid white people who just wanted to buy everything up and hold on until they could squeeze the last little drop out of all the poor people and then get rid of them and then bulldoze everything down, which was the culture of the place, and build like they did with those condos. Because that area where the condos were was where the fishing village was, and they had this kind of pine tree that grew along the beach that held the beach there, and they bulldozed it freaking down to build these condos, and then they got ridiculous flooding from the storm. So they wanted to do that on the other side. So the 2 years was the hiatus of maybe something could have happened. And then I got really sick, and I ended up being stuck on top of the mountain at the school for a year, 2 years, nearly, just eking out, and I had to get rid of everything. I'd sell everything and had no real cash flow and couldn't do any of that kind of stuff anymore. My parents died, and so it was just, it was that transition period. And then I was still kind of working for, the Desperate Lawyers, and then I died in a plate of spaghetti. And then it took 6 years to get to where I am now, on dreamy dreamland, being here for you guys. Let's see what else you guys are saying here. When was the last time? Bless us with your and fish. Going to look up Cliff High. Yep. And Asheville. No, her name is Ashley. Dana Ashley. Ashlile. Ashley. Right? And also Max Igon for Crow House. And, dark journalism. Let's see, just drop in Graham Dublin. Oh, there's Graham. Hey, Graham. Tell them about the big guy in the cowboy outfit at the concert. Yes, Dirk Dorge, Alien, right? We did this No Nukes festival on right in front of the World Trade Center. All the dirt they dug out, they threw and put in a landfill into the East River, and then they dredged out a big chunk of the Hudson and put it there, and which protected all of the there was this, what was it called? There was a subway line that went into New Jersey, right, from the World Trade Center, right? And it also went to the West Village. What was it called? It'll pop into my head. But it was, when the subway got to be 30 cents, this thing was still 10 cents, right? When it went to $1.50 on the subway, it was still 10 cents. What was it called? Not the PATH train. That's what it was called. PATH, P-A-T-H, right? And so they had to protect it. So when they dug the big foundation for the World Trade Center, and all of the subways and all of the PATH trains and a good portion of the railroad lines went underneath the World Trade Center. And so during the Bill Clinton years, when the blind Sikh blew up that truck in the basement of the World Trade Center, right? If they had moved that truck and put it against the wall of the bathtub, which was this big concrete thing that kept the Hudson River from going into all of the basements of the World Trade Center, and then going into all of the subway lines and the PATH lines, they had just moved it over 100 yards because they put the truck right in the middle of the parking lot, so all of the ports went straight up instead of out, right? And if they had put it against a bathtub, what would have happened, it would have brought the whole Hudson River into the basement of the World Trade Center and would have wiped out all of the subways and probably killed maybe 250,000 people if they had done it around, rush hour, right? And so it's pretty obviously, I mean, they had an FBI guy on the inside of that. That's how they arrested all those people like that. They let them do it, right? And then after that, the World Trade Center put up all of these protocols about, bombing of the building. And the day of the attack on the World Trade Center by the airliners, those protocols, they stopped because one of the protocols, if one building got attacked, they were to immediately evacuate everyone. So the North Tower gets hit, right? And everyone starts getting out of all the other buildings. In the South Tower, they stopped the people. They had people at the door. No, it's okay, go back. And the people said, no, that's against the protocol. No. And the majority of the people who died in 9/11 at the World Trade Center were the people in the South Tower because they got stuck up there. And the smart people, I had friends who were in that building, and even though they were told to go back up, they said, screw this, and they went home, right? And then 40 minutes later, another plane hits the South Tower. And then the amazing thing, the North Tower has been burning now 2 hours before the South Tower, and then the South Tower goes down before the North Tower. Because what happened was the South Tower, the plane didn't plow straight into the building. It just, whacked the side. So most of the gasoline was burning outside the building. So the fire department actually knocked down that fire. And they have recordings of the firemen up there on the 87th floor where the plane hit, saying, oh, we got it covered. And there are pictures of people where the plane took out the windows, are standing in the windows, like waving, like, help us. And about 40 minutes after those pictures and the recording of the firemen saying, no, the fire's out, the buildings fall down. And first the South Tower goes, and then, 20 minutes to an hour later, the North Tower goes down. And then 6 hours later, Building 7 goes down that never got hit by an airplane. And so it's just like the Warren Commission of Kennedy's assassination. It was never, there was, Dorothy Kilgallen was going to break the Kennedy assassination wide open, and she dies. Marilyn Monroe, who, had all the secrets that Jack and Bobby told her, she dies. And close to 200 people who were near or around or saw something They all died, within a year. And then another, over the next 20 years, another 700 people died. And the stuff is pretty right there, and that's the kind of stuff that Art Bell would have people on and talk about. He had Jim Mars. Jim Mars wrote a book about the Kennedy assassination that what's his name used as the base for the movie JFK. And the real, all the real information about the JFK assassination came out in New Orleans, So the movie JFK, for all its foibles, pretty much, was right on for what it was. That scene where the colonel played by the guy who plays the president in the Hunger Games, and he basically, in a 5-minute little explanation, tells exactly what happened. It's all right in front of us, right? It's all there. And the only way that we can get through this is with love's co-creation, not with anger, not with hate, not with, saying the world is flat or the world is round, or being a truther or being a discloser or any of those things. They're all distractions, right? Because it's all pretty much right in front of us. Just open your heart and see, think with your heart. Don't think with your head, right? Oh, this amazing one is, let's see. Away with face of the story. Let's see. The time is now. Finally, I can share words of contrary. Okay. Go, Jamie. Tell us. What was your band called? What was what was the band called? Enjoy. That was the band. Enjoy. Will you tell them about the big guy? Oh, yes. Dirk George. So we had this. So they built this big landfill where they're going to build the marina, and then the oil embargo happened, and we had the big crash, and New York City went bankrupt. So they didn't build anything there for almost 20 years. So there's this gigantic, landfill out there. It was like a gigantic beach, and we all lived down in Tribeca, so that was a place we would go, have fun, And we started, the lady who started Printed Matter, what was her name? Well, we and collaborative artists got a grant to do art there. We called it Art on the Beach, and we did all kinds of shows there. And because, we kind of controlled that space, and the city let us do whatever the heck we wanted to do, I did a gigantic no nukes, benefit rally against nuclear power and nuclear weapons, right? And we had 500,000 people there. As many people went to that rally and we did a big rally at, Madison Square Garden the weekend, and then the next weekend we did it at this landfill, and then we did one in D.C., right? And then we did a Wall Street action, which was the precursor to the Occupy movement, because we occupied Wall Street. We went down there, and Wall Street is a really narrow little suite, and then Pearl Street goes into it to Water Street, and we just stuffed it with about 3,000 people. Moved, didn't leave, and we had lots. It was all about entertainment. We had Bread and Puppet there with their, gigantic puppets, and we had teach-ins, and so we were there until the police got really serious and basically brought in 100 horses and, this narrow space and charged the 3,000 people with these horses. I said, we're just going to run us over. And if people died, that's, no big deal, right? And then the guys in Bread and Puppet had these big, tall, guys who would get on sticks, that they had these puppets that were like 30 feet tall. And so they had them down. It was just like Mel Gibson and Heartthrob or that Scottish thing where, the English charged them, and they had these big sticks, and said, "Well, we got these big, dolls up," and the horses saw them and freaked out and threw the police and ran away. Right, and we got arrested for it because the cops didn't even get close to us when we got these guys to stand up, and the horses reared and threw the police off the horses, and we got arrested for attacking the police. I mean, they were like a block away when we did this. And anyway, so we did this gigantic rally in the landfill, and my gig was basically, because I was this theater guy who did rock and roll festivals, we put the stage up in the landfill. Well, it's pretty hard to build a 80-ton stage, that's on big wood floor and on metal pipes, and and if you put it on sand, you had to pour concrete footings, and the month and a half that we had to set up, it rained the whole time, torrentially. So it's pretty hard to pour concrete when it's raining, But luckily, my brothers and sisters in the unions came to our aid, and the concrete guys came and poured concrete that sets up in the rain. And it was a miracle. Meaning, for every obstacle, a miracle happened, right? And we had no electricity there, and they wouldn't let us put a generator. And so I had to magically, bring in a high voltage line that I basically picked up off a substation that was for the PATH trains. And because it was in the New York subways, the MTA police and the New York police didn't arrest us because they didn't have the authority. And the PATH train police, that substation, wasn't on their property, even though it was their substation. It was in a no man's land that no one had the authority over. And I just hijacked the juice, and it was high voltage, so you couldn't turn it off. You just had to tap into it right off the thing. So I took, 90,000 volts, and I got a transformer that on a truck that I got from a junkyard in the Bronx. So we did all these amazing kind of things, and at the last minute, so Saturday, so it's raining and raining and raining and raining. And luckily, it was in the summertime. And at a certain point, forget about wearing. We just were drenched rats, and we got it done. And the evening, around 10 o'clock on a Friday. The thing was on a Saturday, and Friday, it was like it was, we finished, and the minute we finished, it stopped raining. And there was a Chinese restaurant. I used to work for Hung and Fung Electric, and I used to date Harry Hung's daughter, and she was, woo. And her mother was also woo. And she came from a long line of deep woos from China. And they had a dim sum, the best dim sum restaurant, the really highest class dim sum restaurant in Chinatown, over near Confucius Plaza. And so she used to, she was no longer my girlfriend, but that whole family, except for my ex-boss, but the mother's side of the family really liked me. So even though and the daughter who I dated, we were still buds for years, right? And so they, I used to always go to their restaurant, which no Anglos ever could get into. And I would go there, and, because they had the best dim sum. That's one of the things I miss most, dim sum. And so, and most people don't even know what dim sum is. So it's steamed food, noodles and stuffed buns and all kinds of great stuff. So, and that's where the ubiquitous Chinese buffet comes from. But it's not even close to dim sum. So anyway, these guys, that mother, she loved the fact that I was always so socially conscious, and because she was kind of a radical girl herself. And she was on the board of the Confucius Plaza, right? And that whole housing project, she had the political will to do. So anyway, that whole month that we were doing, she would come over with her catering truck and feed us. She put a wedding tent up there so we wouldn't be totally sogged out. And she was very supportive and gave money to the cause. And because she had people she knew who were in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So she was quite sensitive to the whole motif. And so it was a miracle that we got that stage up and everything worked. So, it's 10 o'clock. We finish. Just at the moment we finish, it stops raining, right? And then the catering truck shows up, and Mrs. Wu brings out, carts and carts and cups of dim sum, and we're sitting around these tables, and we're smoking. And she was a smoker too. She always had good boo, and we're drinking her cocktails. And anyway. So it's a sunny, and it stopped raining and the clouds disappear, and it's a starry night, and this landfill was far enough out into the Hudson where it was dark. And so we're under the tent, and someone goes, "Come on out here," and we come out there, and the sky is so ridiculously clear, it's unbelievable, and it's still warm and it's kind of humid, and so if you're on the sand, it's foggy. But if we went up the steps and got on the stage, it was a good 30 feet above the sand, right? Because we knew we were going to have a lot of people. And so we wanted everyone, about 50 yards. So we put the fence up to keep people away from the stage about 50 yards. So 50 yards back, 30 feet up was just the right height for everyone to see this show. So anyway, we go up on stage, and we got our boxes of buns and thermoses of coffee and jugs of nice, Remy and other cocktails. And, we all got boo, and we go up there, and we bring folding, lawn chairs, and we kind of sit back, and we see the stars, and it's like, the clearest starry night. There's no moon, and there's no lights in the direction. We're looking towards New Jersey, and we're looking more towards Bear Mountain than Jersey City. So there are no lights over there, and we're seeing shooting stars, and it's just like an unbelievable show. And we're patting ourselves on the back, and we're pretty baked. And all of a sudden, everything starts shaking like a freaking earthquake. And, here we built this stage on sand, and we're going, uh-oh. And everything's shaking, like that. It's really shaking. And it was a good test of the stage. Nothing fell apart, nothing fell over, nothing collapsed. But what happened was, about 150 yards from where we were out into the landfill, it was real. The whole, all of the sand was vibrating and making, all kinds of geometric shapes in the sand. And there was enough light from the World Trade Center where that was, from that direction, that it was illuminating the sand in a greenish glow, not real like a floodlight or a street light or headlight, but a glow. And these geometric forms are forming in the sand. And now, I've been studying the esoteric for a long time, and I've had some great teachers. And so I kind of knew what a Sitchin was, which is a mathematical pattern that has harmonic density that is used in, shamanism and in, being an alchemist. That's part of the science of that, right? And so these forms are in the sand. The vibrations were so, and the sand was kind of, really bubbling out there. And we're standing on the stage, and the stage kind of settles out, but 150 yards in front of us, this is all going on, making these sections, and they're glowing from the World Trade Center light. And, all of a sudden, out of the middle of these, geometric patterns, the sand opens up and a metal box rises right out of the ground. And it was like, I don't know, 4 meters by 4 meters by 4 meters by 6 meters high, right? Edges, there's 4 edges. It's a square, it's a cube. And it's more rectangular, actually. And it's higher than it is square. And but what I'm saying, there is no edge. There is no, little, thing. But the metals came together. It was like one solidly formed cube, right? And a side towards us became vibratorial, right? And then kind of became translucent, and then kind of disappeared. And there were 6, 8 folk who were pretty tall, and they were all dressed in form-fitting mylar kind of very reflective suits. They were it was the same kind of material that the box was out of, but it was a material that was very, looked like metal. But the suits almost looked like they were part of the people, and they were humanoid. The girls were definitely girls. They were quite shapely, and the guys were definitely guys. They had their junk, and they had long white hair, and they were, what people would call tall Nordics, right? But they were 150 yards from us. They weren't like right up here. And so I'm looking at them, and they're looking at us, and they kind of step out of the box and look up at us and kind of give us a little salute, like, you guys have done a really good job. And Mrs. Wu was like, are you guys seeing this? It's what I've been drinking or smoking. It's what gets. Are we all seeing this? Are we all on the same page here? What the back is going? She kind of was enunciating what we were all thinking, because none of us, we were all like, right? Because we had been up for the last month. We hadn't really slept. We'd been working on this thing, and we were like, and so they kind of, like thumbs up, like. And then they turned around, they just kind of did 3 or 4 steps backwards, and the wall came back up, and the vibration and the box went down into the sand. And that was like, what the frack? And then as soon as that happened, the sun rose. Now, when we finished, it was about 10:30. When Mrs. Wu showed up, it was about 11. So when we kind of went, up on the stage to look at the stars and eat our boxed, Chinese food, and drink good liquor and smoke boo, it was 11:45, and so between 11:45 and the bouncing around and the symbols on the sand and the box coming up and then walking out of a translucent wall and saluting us and going back in and the box going down, then the sun rises. So it felt like all of a half an hour, if that, yet, something like 6 hours transpired, And so we were like, what the frack? So Mrs. Wu was like, I got to go. And she goes, why don't you guys go back with me to the restaurant, and I'll have them make you breakfast. And maybe you can, we got a room where you guys can crash, and it's dark. And so we went back and we had breakfast, and we were too high strung. Now, see, our gig was to, run the show. I'm not running the show, build the stage, get it ready. Now, I was on a lot of other committees. I was on the legal committee. I was on the, advertising committee. I was on this committee, and, I was just on them, just to be on them, to give them my point of view, not to run them, not to be the chief. And even the stage thing, I had a bunch of guys who knew what they were doing, guys and gals, and I was just the facilitator. That's what I do. That's my best thing. Anyway, so we were too high strung. So we went back to the site, and it was starting to, tool up. The show was going to start around 3, 4 p.m. And so the acts were showing up, and they were, Jackson Brown was there. Who else was there that I can remember? Dylan was there. Who else was there? A bunch of people of that level who were, the anti-nuclear folks, And so there were a lot of interesting people. So, it was a big stage, and we had, Mrs. Wu's wedding tent as like the green room, and we had a green room up on stage too. We had 2 tents on either side of the stage, and we had the soundboard, out there before the fence. And anyway, so we had access, where the limos could come in. We had a red carpet from where the blacktop stopped and the sand started, and we had boards under there. Anyway, I mean, we really went all out for what we had. So I just hung out in the, near the free bar in the green room in Mrs. Wu's wedding thing, and she had the food there too, So, I was hanging out there, and everybody smoking boo and drinking, having a really old good time. And my wife is here, she's like snapping away, she's in seventh heaven, all around these rock and rollers, famous people, you name it, they were there, artists, etc. Because in the green room, it wasn't just the acts that were playing. There were all these, notaries that were there. And so I'm there, and, and I'm well enough known amongst everybody because I was like one of the people. So we got to do this. I was like, back when I came back from Mexico, and all my friends were still involved in the anti-war movement and the racial integration movement and the beginning of the women's movement. I said, forget all that stuff. It's nuclear power and nuclear weapons. That's going to kill everyone, So, and that's when I met Sam Lovejoy and Michio Kaku and a few others in New York who were really the movement of the movement, right? And the old timers too. Dr. Golf and the Wobblies and a few others. Anyway, that's really the folks who started the anti-move, the no nuke movement, right? And they also, out of that came ad busters, right? Which out of that came, Occupy. So. And the Occupy movement came out of this crew that tried to occupy Wall Street, right? Back, in the, the 70s and 80s when we did this no nuke thing. And so, anyway, so there I am in the tent with all these people. I just like to mingle, I'm not really a guy who goes, oh, I'm the big cheese, oh, boo-ba-doo-ba-doo. I'm just happy to be there, and I'm confident about who I am, and I know a lot of folks, and we just have a good old time. And anyway, so my wife is clicking away, and all of a sudden, I hear her start giggling, and I turn around, and she is facing this guy who's, got to be 12 feet tall, easy, right? And she's maybe 5'8", and I'm about 6 foot, and she's got her camera right in the crotch of this guy who's wearing a kid's cowboy outfit. I mean, straight out of, the kind of cowboy outfit you would get when you were 6, where has the fake, leather that's, made from crushed cardboard and, has plastic gemstones and a cap gun. And he's got the whole look, the fringe jacket, his cap guns, cowboy hat, and he's like, somewhere between 9 and 12 foot tall. And he's, your basic, tall Nordic, blue eyes, long blonde hair. And my wife has got her camera right in his crotch, right? And she's giggling, right? So she's like having the junk, and it's like, if he's 12 foot tall, so his junk has got to be pretty big. And so she's giggling away, and I turn around and see him, and I kind of look up, and I don't know if it was the same guy in the bread box, but he was, he wasn't wearing a silver suit. He was wearing a cowboy outfit. And I'm just turn around, and they're right there. And I look up at him, and he goes, "You did a good job, Al." Now, nobody knows who I am in the rich and famous people in this green room, except a handful of people. I mean, Jackson Brown has no idea who I am. Dylan has no idea who I am. But the organizer people know who I am. The political folk know who I am. The people who really put this thing on know who I am. So they do introduce me. Jackson Brown, this guy, he's like, with one, he was there with Sam Lovejoy when they took down the tower and blah, blah, blah. And he was, in Harvard Square when they started the Earth Day in 71. Anyway, so that was me, and I didn't have to blow my whistle. It's pretty much, the bottom line, I don't have to go on about anything about me. It's like right there, right? I got the photos. But anyway, so he goes, "You did a great job, Al. I'm proud of you. We're all proud of you," right? And so I kind of look up at him, and he puts out his hand, and I have to put my hand up to shake his hand, and then he hands me a business card, right? And it's not a card. All his name is Dirk Dorge, right? And he has an office at the UN, and it's extension 00001, like the first phone number ever in the UN. It's like that's his phone number. I mean, you call up the general directorate and ask for extension 00001, and you get Dirk Dorge. And he hands me this, and the letters are just floating in the sky. And I try to hold them, and they kind of move around my hand. And he goes, "Oh, you'll remember that number." And about 3 years later, I was doing my little NGO at the UN, and when I had my little office, and I said, "You know what? I'm going to try 00001, right?" I dial it, and it goes, "Hello, Al. Want to have lunch?" So that was Dirk Dorge, right? And he was always around, but he was never there. And no one knew who. When I said, "So do you know Dirk Dorge?" And he always, when I saw him, he always wore that outfit of the cowboy outfit. I saw him twice at the UN, right? The one time when I dialed 00001, and Dirk, "Hello, Al." And we had lunch in the cafeteria, and no one even blinked. 12-foot guy in a kid's cowboy outfit, no one freaking blinked. Anyway, we tell him about the big guy in a cowboy outfit. Yeah, well, okay, I just did. Right, Dirk Dorge. Gentrification. Oh, I thought he was leaving, Jane. Yep. What was your band called? Enjoy, right? ENINGOY, I think it was called. Enjoy. That was the name of the reggae band in Port St. Lucie, right? And the leader of the band, his name was Ide. And what was, okay, that's the name. Dreadly Up, yep. I was in a band called The Chicken of Is. Everything you ever tell me, you are the bard of metaphor, buddy. Because I have to think about a day and a half of everything you say, and then I get the joke. The time is now. Finally, I can share words, Kadri. Let's see, let me share those words. Right? Esoteric feel, man. Okay. Ran away He fished that story I want him to talk about. Graham, what story? The cowboy story? I just told the cowboy story. That's going up. I'm going to go down. Long journey. Great to talk. Off to make a cup. Okay, Jane, WTC. Thermite. Yep, thermite. Yep. The guy who he paid like $3 million to get the lease on the World Trade Center, like 6 months, and then he gets $1 billion, a building insurance, and 3 months later, the WTC comes down. If he wasn't in on it, I don't know who was. This is an amazing one. He has. Let me see. Thermite. Yep. Looking and feeling well out, yet vigor is limitless. Yep. Lots of people have seen this Dirk Dorge. Yep, I'm sure they have. See, okay. Let's see. I follow Bob. Let's see. Movement. You have been in best. Yep. So it's best to be in the beginning because that's when the best people are there. I mean, the movement is always good. Depending, whatever movement you're in, it's when you are doing the movement. Right? Love you, dude. Seagulls out. David Bowie's a good one too. Yep. See ya, Bob. Crew, have a good one. See ya, bud. And I should be doing one in the early morning coming, right? Buddy, what time is it right now in your neck of the woods? Is it morning, afternoon, evening? Spartacus, yep. I love that movie, by our good friend. You mingle, yep. Dirk Baby, who loves you? Yeah. Who loves you, Dirk Baby? He had a strange thing happen in Canada. False nuke alert after the Iran planned bombing. And then China 19 coincidence. From my sources, the thing that happened, the shooting down of the Iranian airliner, why the Iranians blew it out was that after, Orange Pinhead went after their military political leader, there was no reason to do it, right? And but he did it because he could, and he thought it would look good for his politicalness, right? He didn't really think about what would come later. And what happened was the hidden hand had to pull all its contractors that were doing things in Iran out of there because by taking out the Iranian leader in Iraq, it kind of showed all of the personnel that was in Iran. And so they all were on, 60 of those people who died in that airline crash were contractors for the hidden hand. And that was the Iranian. They were ready to sacrifice their own people to get those people. And that's what why that airplane was taken down. And again, don't believe me. That's just kind of what I heard. And, I kind of looked at it and stayed, and it made sense. So we had a strange thing happen in Canada. False nuke alert after the main plane bombing. And then a nucleating bias happened 19. Yep, coincidence. Yep. 001. Yep, definitely the dude related to Dirk Benedict. Yep. Let's see. Worst case about the virus. Well, like I said, what the virus is going to do is infect the whole human genome, right? And it's going to be because AIDS and the other nasty virus weapon in Africa are the two ends of the bookends, and then the virus strain of the bats is in between. And once you're infected, it'll be like AIDS. You will always have that infection. You won't get sick, and you will have to take a big pharma drug for the rest of your life. So it's going to be one heck of a revenue stream. If the whole human race to stay semi-healthy will, have to take this medicine for the rest of life, just, trillions of dollars, right? And the only way that can be paid for is by getting rid of money and forgiving everyone's debt and bringing out the technology of the breakaway civilization, which will be our new that'll be the new world order. And it'll be flung on us as another red flag of being invaded by a nasty insectoid race that our, space brothers will come and save us. And of course they will, they will be wearing Nazi uniforms with swastikas, but they will be our Aryan space brothers, and we will bring on a new unified, Star Trek crew, right? So, so everyone will have to get a biochip right there, and your money will be your face, and you will get your supplements by mail. And if you don't, you will probably die. But, a lot of people won't. But if you don't take them, you won't get that little chip, and you won't get anything, You won't get a place to stay, you won't get a job, you won't get anything to eat, and then you will be considered an outcast, and you will have to be taken care of, and God knows where you'll be taken care of. So that is the worst case of the virus, right? Then going to start getting into camping out and, survival. That's what do you think I've been out in the deep green for the last 20 years for, right? Why do you think I've been talking about, hey, there's this window of opportunity coming? Well, that's what this virus is. It's a window of opportunity. And if you go look at our sister, Dana, D-A-N-A, Ashley, A-S-H-I-L-E, that is, both those guys have good insights on this, along with Cliff Hyde and, good old Max of Crow House. Kind of go look at all those guys, right? And Turkey has, and that's another thing, again, they don't have balls. All of this stuff is scripted. We need a World War III, and that's going to be the World War III because, Turkey's part of NATO. They're going to push it. The Russians and the Syrians are already, going back into that Idlib area because it's part of Syria. Turkey does not have any right to be there, and they've already killed 46 Turkey soldiers, and it's pretty much been the Syrians who've done it, but it's with Russian, rockets and planes, and there's going to come a point where the Turkey guys will be where the Russian guys are, and it'll be a flashpoint, and there'll be a full-out war between Turkey and Russia, right? And then Israel will get in, and then Iran will be pulled in, and then we will be pulled in, and then NATO will be pulled in. It'll be just like World War One. That's what happened in World War One. There were all these treaties amongst, just because some dude gets blown up in Sarajevo, we had to have World War One. No, it was a bunch of rich bankers who wanted to make some money, right? So that's what the turkeys are. It's going to be a turkey shoot. So virus, Third World War, collapse of the world economy, and aliens invading. That's all going to happen between now and what's the end of 18? But before the October surprise. That'll be the October. So we're not going to have a presidential election, right? Period. Not going to have it. And Michael, white-haired Pence will be our imperial leader, right? Donald Sutherland, right? Isn't it amazing how Mike Pence and Donald Sutherland look so much alike? And don't believe a word I'm saying. This is all a cartoon show. I'm just an entertainer, Yep, bug out bag time. And gang, you can always come visit here. I got easily could, Cadillac camping for about 20 folk, and if people were to show up sooner rather than later, we could start gardening. I have a very nice garden. Could feed about 40 people easily in the forest. Got a lot of stuff in it. And it's just I can't do the gardening anymore all by myself, Can't do much physical laboring. I do a little bit, slow but sure, tortoise kind of, but, with many hands comes light work. Turkey has Europe by the balls. Yep. We'll open the gates. Yep. And they could dump 1 million of the Syrian refugees into Europe and make sure that, a few Chinese folks are in the mix, Because that's what I think happened to South Korea. That religious crew you go study their theology, and they're all about end times. So there were a bunch of them that were passing the hat in China, in Hunan province. So they probably knew they were infected and came back and made sure that the other 20,000, because they have these gigantic halls where when they do their services, there's 10,000 people at a time. So, a few people walking amongst 10,000 sneezing and coughing. Because that is the real, the most definite, amazing thing about this virus is the how amazingly quick it infects people. And that the virus can stay on a flat surface for somewhere between 2 and 20 days, We see those pictures of those guys in spacesuits, disinfected in every square inch of China. You kind of get the point, and you don't see anybody doing that around here. And people aren't even handing out hand sanitizers. Well, that's Jane. What he's talking about is dumping 1 million Syrian refugees that are infected into Europe. That's how Turkey has Europe by the balls. Yes. Like I said, the whole Arab Spring was, created by, the hidden hand. Again, when you say America is just a player. It's not, this is a transnational, all this to get Iran. No, Iran is just, again, another big player. It's not to get Iran. It's just Iran is like a diving board. It's got to spring us in the Third World War. Keep us looking one way. Yep. Time is up. Yep. It's Pence party soon. Yep, exactly. And that guy he's weirder and worse than President, what's his name, in Hunger Games. Yep. Again, that's exactly what I'm saying. That this virus, once you get it in you, you're not getting rid of it. It's going to be like AIDS. You're going to have to take a drug that Big Pharma is going to make, amazing money. When you're like, oh my God, I could die. I'll pay anything for this, for the rest of my life, right? I'm glad I am, in my 70s because I don't, I'm looking forward to going, but I just have to do my job. I have to keep plugging. That's why I started Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob, to, excite and entertain. That's my job, is to be a griot, tell you a story, get you to look, past the distraction, have you open your heart through meditation, right? To, be the guide yourself, Here I am, your sensei. I'm guiding you through your Akashic record. I'm telling the story. You're listening to the story, guys. Every time I go on air here, I'm putting you into a shamanic state. And it's not like watching TV where you're in a hypnagogic state. No, this is you are awake state, right? You are conscious state. You are aware of your free will, of your love's co-creation state, right? Yep, and the show, The Maids, yep. So, we're almost at 4 hours. So, it's almost 7 o'clock. So, I'm going to go upstairs and see how my soup is doing. And we are in the story. You are the story. We are the pebble in the pond. That's what we are. We're here to make the waves. We're here to vibrate the sand, like the guys in the bread box, right? To make them harmonic stitchings, right? We are the alchemists. We are the shamanic, psychosocial, cultural, forensic, anthropologic shaman alchemists, right? We are the bards of metaphor. Okay, gang, let's say a little prayer, and I'm going to go up to my pot of soup, see how it's doing. Predictive programming, right? But, by just uttering those words, it's like, oh, I can't do it. No, it's like, forget predictive programming. It's been going on since, the Tower of Babel. Yes, it's not real, Jane. The only thing that's real is love's co-creation. My love for you, my love for Graham, for Lola, for Fish, for Dragon, for, 007, for all of you, Sound always a pleasure. Yep. So our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil as it was in the beginning. So in every day and every way we take to the peace of the earth and we make it stronger. And Father Sky, let us breathe in your prana, so you may bless us and protect us. And enlarge our territory and put your hand on our shoulder to keep us away from evil, so we will do no harm. And Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for our sinners, now and the hour of our death. Amen. It was in the beginning, is now, ever shall be. And every day let us take Mother Earth's grace, humility, gratitude, and hospitality, and ground it in her chi and make it stronger. And Mother Earth, bless us indeed. Enlarge our territory. Put your hand on our shoulder and keep us from evil so we will do no harm. And I love you all, and I'll see you relatively soon. I'm a little tired. I want to eat. I'm just going to read a little bit, write a little bit, then I'm going to go to sleep. And then, if I go to sleep early enough, I will wake up, 5 o'clock this time, and catch all you guys over there in Asia land and the other side of the world. It'll be your morning or early afternoon, and in Europe, it'll be your 5 o'clock is actually a pretty good time for everybody who's not in America. So, okay, gang, I love you all. And again, all these shows are on my channel. I've got more than 1,000. And get out that dartboard and start getting 3 numbers and start looking at other shows and see the energetics, because you're getting really attuned to that energetic shamanic energy every time I do a live chat, right? And all you guys who are in the chorus really vibrate. You should go and watch the other shows and pick up the knack of vibrating to those shows that are already there, because that will give you the insight that time is not linear. So you can start really seeing things in a different way, right? And that's my little plan behind all of this, is to get you guys tuned up, like the tuning fork, right? And you are the pebbles in the pond. I'm just your griot. I'm just your shaman. I'm just your sensei. Just your teacher. I'm not. What's the term? The person who holds the garland, the person who is on the horse with the armor, and no, I'm just like Grandpa Smurf, right? Tell you a story. Okay, everyone, Jane, Dragon, everybody who's here, I love you all. See you later, Graham. Stay well, my buddy. Like I said, I'll probably be showing up in the morning tomorrow. I'm going to go have, it's 7 o'clock. Good time to have my last meal. Okay? And then I'll read a little and write a little and think a little, and meditate a little, pray a little, and send you all, love, grace, and healing. Right? No fear. No fear. No fear. Nothing to be scared of here.